Deb, where'd you put that list? Just so Jill can announce where it is. On the podium.
Okay. All right. May I have a motion to reconvene into public session? That is Julie, seconded by Greg. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here this evening. As I begin my chairperson remarks, I first want to offer a heartfelt thank you to Nadine Vassal on behalf of this board. Nadine, the secretary to the superintendent and the board, is retiring tomorrow after working for this district for 48 years. Nadine is well known for her kind and calm demeanor and has been the wind beneath the wings of the district's central office, working closely with several of the superintendents in this district and supporting countless board members. We will deeply miss seeing her here in the district office and wish her well in her retirement. Please join me in a round of applause to recognize Nadine's selfless dedication to our district. Thank you all. I'm now going to take several minutes to provide some additional color related to the current budget process. I respectfully ask for your patience before we start the public hearing. As we've noted through this year's budget process, this is a very challenging school budget year. Over the past decade, proposed budget increases have averaged 3.7%, ranging from a high of 5.2% in fiscal year 2015 to a low of 2.08% in fiscal year 2018. This year's proposed budget increase is almost 6.2%, approximately 2/3 greater than the last 10 years average. More broadly, our Board of Selectmen is preliminarily experiencing a higher than usual operating budget, and our entire town has gone through a reevaluation that will have tax implications for many. Jim Palin, the Board of Finance Chair, will give a better overview of those factors shortly. That said, the budget in front of us, i.e. the education of our town students, is what this board is deliberating. There are multiple reasons for the much larger than average proposed increase, some driven by items within the direct control of this board and others outside of our control. For example, significant rate increases for health insurance and bus contracts, as well as new special education mandates from the state, are out of the Board of Education's control. Other key items, like the teacher and administrator contracts, were approved and implemented by this board. We are a people business. Salaries and benefits among our district staff members represent over 3/4 or 78% of the total $121 million proposed budget by the superintendent. We're in the second year of the current teacher's contract. The primary goals of this contract are to recognize the hard work and dedication of our staff, first and foremost, and to support teacher recruitment and retention. This contract awards teachers a 13.86 wage and benefit increase over the 3 years, the largest in recent history. The fiscal year 24-25 represents the second year of the contract, which awards a total salary and benefit increase of 4.54% over the current fiscal year. Similarly, our recently settled administrative contract also focused on recruitment and retention, addressed quality of work and life issues, and even increased the number of days of work for our elementary APs to better match their increased workload. That contract settled at 13.47% over the 3 years. It's important to note that both contracts were publicly reviewed by the RTM and were not rejected by the body. I mentioned these two contracts, not just because of their physical impact, but importantly, also to highlight this board's recent focus on the recruitment and retention of the district's coveted educators. Darien aims to be a competitive and desirable place to work. Given tonight's public hearing and our subsequent board discussion, I again remind both board members and the public of the important human component of this challenging process. I caution everyone to consider the impact of commentary on the morale of our respected district employees and our overall community culture. Our meetings are public and recorded. They are viewed not only by those with a direct interest in the district, but also by prospective district employees. Tonight, we are in week 4 of our annual budget process. The board's function in this process is to do the diligent work of prioritizing budget-related decisions. The board's discussion should be financial in nature, not evaluative. That is an operational responsibility of our administration. Said another way, we as a board look at positions, sometimes referred to as FTEs, and their impact on the budget, not at individual employees. It is neither appropriate nor a board member's role to make evaluative commentary related to individuals during the budget process. I will have more to add on this topic later when the board reviews the line item budget proposals put forth by individual board members. I want to be very clear. This board and our community stand behind both the DEA and DAA contracts and the efforts contained within them and other contracts to recognize our constituents' appreciation for the hard work and dedication of all of the employees of the Darien School District. In this district, whether our budget is considered too high by some or too low by others, we aim for continuous improvement. Dr. Adley's proposed budget sets out a series of changes focused on improving recruitment and retention, augmenting instructional and mental health services for students, and augmenting instructional and mental health services for students. It strives to do so through enrollment-based staffing changes, redeployment of resources, and identifying staffing efficiencies. The board is currently undertaking its own critical assessment and prioritization of Dr. Adley's budget-related proposals. We've heard some public statements and we've received quite a few emails, all of which we read. Thank you all for your commentary so far. For the sake of clarity, I would also like to take a moment to correct one narrative that is currently circulating within our community. There are no proposed reductions to specials programming, including music or world language classes, in the superintendent's proposed budgets. The proposed reductions pertain to the number of staff who deliver or administer specials in world language. As noted, and as many of you are aware, the board is in the process of evaluating this change. To quickly review where this board currently stands in its budget process, or not so quickly. The first step in our assessment was a series of presentations and question and answer sessions to better understand the superintendent's priorities. The next step, which began last week, is the board's discussion of how the superintendent's proposed budget aligns with board priorities and policy. I would like to clarify that proposals by individual board members as part of an overall effort to debate board priorities should not be interpreted as the will of the board at this time. After tonight's public comment period, the board will hear additional perspective from middle school staff and then continue to deliberate budgetary items. We will further consider what we are about to hear from the public this evening, as well as any additional information received from administration. This deliberation process will continue through the evenings of February 6th and February 13th, when the board votes on the final budget. Upon that vote, the BOE adopts the budget as its own. We will officially submit our budget to the Board of Finance on March 5th. After deliberation at the Board of Finance, the budget will make its final stop at the RTM. Tonight, public comment will begin with the chair of the Board of Finance, followed by the chair of RTM Education, and subsequently members of the public who have signed in with our secretary. I have the first set of signatures here, and there's another one up at the podium if you haven't signed in yet. Please sign into the list if you'd like to speak in person. We will then move to those who wish to speak over Zoom. We are anticipating significant public commentary this evening. While we value each and every one of you, our decisions are not made by referendum, and we need time for important deliberation as well. So if someone has already said what you would like to say, please feel free to simply agree, state your name and agree, and pass on the microphone. That said, if you have additional context that would be helpful to the board, please offer it. After tonight, there will be additional opportunity for public comment on the budget at our next two meetings, and we are always available via email. As always, we thank you for your engagement, for your work to understand what the role of the board is and what it is not, and most of all, for your care and concern for our students, our schools, and our Darien community. With that, I will move to public comment and begin by recognizing Jim Palin, Chair of the Board of Finance. Jim, on behalf of the Board of Education, thank you for joining us this evening.
You can just move the sign-up sheet to the other table, please. And I'll need your name and address. So if you can start with that, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jill. And thank you all for letting me speak at the beginning of this meeting. It's very rare that I get to talk about the budget at the beginning of a meeting. As you'll know from the state of the town, I'm usually the one that closes down shop at around 10:30 at night when everyone's partly asleep. Introduction, Jim Palin. I'm chairman of the Board of Finance here in Darien. I've been on that board. This is my 7th year. And before that, I spent close to 8 years on the RTM. I live at 5 Hickory Lane. I have 2 kids currently in school, some of the teachers of which are back here, and one that graduated 2 years ago. So my comments tonight are to give you a little bit of guidance and reminder of other things that I see in the budget as you're discussing it, and things that I'm going to implore you to think about over the next few weeks ahead of delivering us the budget on May 5th. I'm here tonight to share some observations on the school budget, which the Board of Ed has been reviewing for the last month, and some of the changes which the board are contemplating making and adopting before sending to us. While you may not have heard members of the Board of Finance speaking at public comment, submitting a trove of questions or proposing changes to the superintendent's budget, our members have been hard at work reviewing the budget, listening to your debate online on channel 79, and some of the proposed recent changes. The operating budget that you are reviewing right now is a 6.2% increase versus that which was proposed last year, an increase of over $7 million versus what was spent, what was budgeted last year and likely be spent in full this year. We understand that the administration has some updates to this budget, namely around some recently negotiated union contracts that may move it around a few basis points, but nothing material. We also listened during the last few meetings that you had, most notably the last one, the ed cut night, where certain Board of Ed members discussed areas of the budget that they would like to make adjustments to, presumably to either address areas where they think more resources are needed, or to adjust areas where they think our school can continue to deliver the great services, but there are financial or operational efficiencies that will benefit the taxpayer. Both of these efforts are noble. My focus tonight is going to be on the second area, taxpayers and the overall financial effect of this budget. During the State of the Town on December 11th, again at 10:30 at night, my presentation offered near-term budget guidance to both of our operating boards, the Board of Selectmen that operate town services and the Board of Ed that operates the schools. That guidance was 3 to 4%, incorporating what we call core services at the town and the Board of Ed, as well as other sort of new initiatives. And that guidance incorporated some of the inflationary pressures that I believe have crept into our operating costs of both the schools and the town, including recently negotiated contracts, some of which include the highest increases that the schools or the town has seen. In developing this 3 to 4% guidance, particularly around the Board of Ed, I looked at a few things, namely 10-year compounded annual growth rates. Our enrollment over the past 10 years has fallen by about 35 basis points per year. The overall Board of Ed expenditures, net of any grants you receive, have risen by 4.1% per year, which has driven per pupil expenditures up north of 4.1%, despite the way the state tracks it and adds and subtracts certain items, it only reports 3.7%. So during this period, aggregate town expenditures, debt service, capital, Board of Ed operating expenses, Board of Selectmen operating expenses have risen on average 2.8%. When I look at these historical figures and incorporate the increased cost of certain inputs, inflation is real, labor costs have risen. A 6.2% increase in the Board of Ed operating budget would be the highest increase in the past 10 years and would likely generate the largest ever tax increase that Darien has seen in my 16 years of being involved here. Given the $160 million in bonding that has been approved for the recently completed Oxford School, just under $60 million, and the $101+ million that has been appropriated for the HHR renovations, as well as upcoming capital investment that we need to make in our middle school and our high schools. An operating budget of over 6% is not likely what taxpayers are expecting to see this year in order to deliver the same top educational programs that we have for the past 20 years that I've been in town. This is a revaluation year. The average valuation of homes have risen by 29%. So the mill rate will go down. But taxpayers don't focus simply on the mill rate. They focus on the absolute amount of dollars that they spend. And this year, despite the average going up by 29%, there'll be significant sort of variation. And some taxpayers will see increases much greater than what the average spending increase is. In closing, and I appreciate the extra minute here, I implore the board to reconsider our guidance, which was originally 3 to 4%. I implore you to listen to the efficiencies and the student staff ratio calibrations that are being proposed by your leadership team and work with them to find more efficiencies to deliver the same great education that we have year after year. This board should look at all programs, expenses, and revenues and make sure that our resources are consistently focused on the programming and the assets, both hard capital and human capital assets that have the greatest effect on our students and deliver the overall educational experience and health that we've come to see and demand in Darien,
Thank you, Jim.
but do so with less than a $7 million year-over-year increase. Financial stewardship and the delivery of a great
over time.
education.
We're way over. It's way over time.
We are at time. We're
Last
done.
sentence, the financial stewardship and the delivery of a great education can coexist and have coexisted in this town for many years. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, Michelle, would you please queue up Ed Washeka? I see him here.
Good evening, Mr. Washeka had his hand up. Ed Washeka, you are unmuted and recognized.
Ed is the chair of RTM Education.
Thank you. I'm Ed Washeka, 7 Lee Warden Lane. While I am the chair of the Education Committee on the RTM, these comments are my own. Committee members have followed the budget process to date with keen interest. We appreciate and understand the public concerns on changes proposed by the administration. However, we were surprised at the board's reaction and proposals at the most recent meeting. No doubt, Dr. Adley has a tough job. He is trying to balance the expectations of parents and students in a high-performing district with the need to be fiscally responsible in an inflationary environment. While committee members may not have agreed with all of his individual changes, many of us felt that the administration made a solid effort at trying to manage cost increases to what we felt was an acceptable level. To what he felt was an acceptable level. I suspect that the RTM does not support and will not support a 6.2% increase. Yet after the last meeting, based on proposed additions to the superintendent's budget, the Board of Ed budget seems to be trending higher. I don't understand it. Are we not in the same reality? As a board, you all judge the necessary trade-offs and set priorities for the school system. Based on the increase proposed, where is the trade-off? Is everything a priority? The RTM has been a strong supporter of our excellent school system. At our last meeting, we approved almost $20 million for increases in the HHR program. We've approved almost $200 million in new spending to support improvements in our facilities and services over the last several years. That said, the town budget is not limitless. We must all recognize that we can't fund every good idea and that staffing must follow enrollment. Our committee will do its work and discuss the board's budget. The RTM will vote on it. If the RTM votes it down, the result will be painful for everyone, but especially for our students. You 9 are the best suited amongst us to figure out how to deliver a fiscally responsible budget that the RTM can approve. I urge you to keep at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Okay. With that, I'll turn it over to CDSP leadership.
Good evening. My name is Joanna Walsh. I live at 17 Pleasant Street. I am a co-chair of CDSP along with Crystal Hill, and I'm speaking on behalf of both of us tonight. Tonight, you'll hear speeches from each of our building levels regarding their community's specific concerns. CDSP is weary of nearly every one of Dr. Adley's proposed changes for next year, and nothing we discuss tonight will surprise you. But first, we'd like to take a moment to address something underlying every proposed change in this budget: You've heard the saying, the medium is the message. In this case, the medium is the superintendent's proposed budget. By recommending specific changes, the superintendent is telling us what he values. We talk about the vision of the graduate and the strategic plan and how what we do in the classroom aligns with achieving the goals sought after in these guiding documents. But the real life consequences in this budget tells a different story, and this is what we've learned. 1, language, arts, and music deserve fewer resources. Cutting the world language department chair, cutting specials teachers, and collapsing the art and music RCs together along with creating the director of visual and performing arts signals a kind of disregard for these disciplines. While we believe the administration does value the arts, it's clear that they did not speak to the subject matter experts already in our schools and fully think through the rippling effects these changes will cause. To students who have found their home in these disciplines, the message is clear. 2, student experience encompasses only the explicitly offered curriculum and programming. Dr. Adley has said that this budget doesn't change anything that touches students, yet we know that school is not just a place where kids go to upload information. Student experience is what it is like in the halls during the passing at middle school, how chaotic it is in the elementary classroom with 1 adult and 24 kids, the unique touches that a specials teacher dedicated to one building can provide, or whether you feel valued by your school because your interests and talents are supported as much as anyone else's. Every personnel change in this budget affects student experience, and to pretend otherwise is dishonest. 3, administrative workloads are the biggest pressing concern of the DPS workforce. Darien already has the lowest ratio of student to administrator in our DIRG. And while we don't disagree that the number of meetings is high, we don't understand how adding another administrator will help our children in any visceral way. Teachers and aides are the front line. They see our students every day and know firsthand what is happening, and they are spread extremely thin and hurtling towards burnout already. Eliminating boots on the ground will only make this untenable situation reach a breaking point sooner. We are already seeing consequences on recruitment and retention of staff. So now we ask the board to send the community a different message. Your requested modifications have already signaled that you may not fully agree with the proposed changes. We need a budget that meets the needs of every one of our students. You are in the position to make that happen. Education costs what education costs.
Kathy Loki and Megan Sharon.
My name is Megan Sharon. I live at 39 Behringer Road, and I'm a parent to a son at DHS and 2 girls at MMS.
My name is Kathy Lokersa. I live at 19 Bayberry Lane. I'm a mom to 3 boys, 1 in Royal, Middlesex, and 1 at high school.
We are the co-chairs for student government on the executive board of the Darien High School Parents Association. We had the unique opportunity to attend the students' government's monthly meetings and the privilege to see the impact that this group of young leaders were working hard to contribute and serve their peers and community. On behalf of the high school community, we would like to encourage the board to keep and protect the rich experiences unique to our school and which support the mental health and overall development of our students. Arts and music, clubs and council, and athletics are all important aspects of developing students' interests and identity. Enabling students to explore new avenues, pursue passions, be part of the community, and engage with students and staff outside of core curriculum are essential to preparing for college and beyond. In a community that is already struggling with school spirit, it doesn't make any sense to cut programs that are designed to help foster community and belonging. The impact of this budget will be broadly felt by eliminating stipends for music staff or evening concerts, other costs related to student government advisors and club expenses, consolidating the arts under 1 department chair, just to name a few. You will slowly chip away at the sense of belonging and pride that students feel at DHS.
An overriding aspect of all of these areas is the positive impact to students' mental health. They allow students to form close relationships with adults outside of this classroom setting. The district has spent the past 2 years focusing on how to support our students' mental health challenges. The creation of the DHS Wellness Center, which the Parent Association has also invested in, the addition of the wellness coordinator to ensure it is able to be open to students throughout the day, the Teen Talk have all been well received. The Director of Mental Health was fully supported by this board last year, and it needs to be given the opportunity to become integrated into our schools. The idea of dismantling the mental health scaffolding right after it was put into place is alarming to the high school community. In closing, cutting the budgets for arts and music, club and councils, and athletics will undermine the focus on student mental health and the development of the skills outlined in the vision of the graduate: communication, creativity, curiosity, empathy, independence, and integrity. We ask that you ensure that these programs, which are a vital part of creating well-rounded students, remain fully funded in the upcoming year. On a more personal note, I'm relatively new to Darien and also a lifetime educator. And when my boys started school last year, after having been schooled abroad in the Netherlands their whole lives, they immediately felt welcome. I was so glad to finally share with them the American way of life, having grown up in Pennsylvania. Here, schools are the center of everything, and seeing that again through their eyes has been wonderful. Let's make sure to keep schools the happy, positive, fun places we know and want them to be. I look in awe at all of these schools and what they have to offer, and all we're saying is please, please keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Gromowski.
Good evening. I'm Gina Gromelski, residing at 95 Raymond Street. I serve on the executive board, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Darien High School Parents Association, and I'm a mom to students at Tokenique and Middlesex. First of all, thank you so much, Dr. Adley, for everything, and Jill and the entire board for all your thoughtful considerations and for putting our kids first always. I'd like to discuss the administrative restructuring in the budget and some proposals by members of the board. We are particularly concerned with proposals to cut certain department chairs, specifically world language. This department is expanding, not contracting. The chair oversees class offerings in 5 languages, including 2 which are actively adding courses every year. No one but the department chair has the expert knowledge on developing and implementing new curriculum and overseeing the staff that are teaching these new courses for the first time. Similarly, the proposal to remove the English department chair is worrying. English is a core subject, and effective reading and writing skills are integral to our students' futures in both higher education and in their careers. Considering the younger students who mostly learned during the COVID years, this is one of the hardest hits this budget can take. I've read my 5th graders' essays. Also, considering the modest cost savings involved, eliminating release time for supervising the art department feels unnecessary. Just as we wouldn't expect a math teacher to oversee science labs, lumping visual arts with music overlooks the unique needs of each of the departments. The music department shouldn't be in charge of ceramic supplies. As for the assistant principal position, the high school administration is quite concerned about the number of PPTs the assistant principals need to prepare for and attend to. We are not opposed to nor supportive of adding an AP while making department chair cuts. What we would really like to see is a reimagining of which administrators divide up the PPTs. This needs to be explored in more depth outside of the budget discussion so that different possibilities can be considered. Regarding special education, we do support the change of a 10-month department chair to a 12-month program director position, but we are not in support of eliminating the secondary SESS program director, a position that specifically oversees grades 6 through 12. We are concerned that one person in charge of K to 12 will not be able to give the 6th to 12th graders the time that they need. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Carrie Vomaka, and then Goliath Phillip, you're on deck.
Carrie Bomaka, 14 Harbor Road. I'm speaking as co-vice chair of the Middlesex Parent Association. We continue to hear from MMS parents that they are concerned with the proposal to cut 7 FTEs, 1 campus monitor, and 6 teachers from the Middlesex budget. One parent remarked to me that she felt the district had started this budgeting process by asking the wrong question. We should not be looking at ROI per student. We should be solving for how students are prepared for the world academically, socially, and mentally. Middlesex parents have significant questions about how these cuts will be made and the functional impact on our children. Originally, this change was presented as the removal of an entire team in either 6th or 7th grade. Subsequently, this plan seems to have been modified to removing teachers across various teams and grade levels. We've also been told that there will be more teachers teaching across multiple teams, possibly more students who have to take classes outside of their team structure, and even the possibility of combined teams across grade levels. The team model has been successful in managing one of the largest middle schools in the state for many years. It is valued by parents, students, and staff. Any risk of an erosion of this model is highly concerning. Parents are also concerned about the removal of the campus monitor. This role is another student-facing adult that offers supervision and guidance on top of providing additional safety and security in a very large building with over 1,000 students enrolled. When Superintendent Adley proposed this budget, he justified staff reductions at Middlesex by pointing to declines in student enrollment. In a vacuum or to a consultant, that logic might make sense. However, a top-down approach to cutting off critical resources for our students in one fell swoop is ill-advised. We believe a bottom-up, well-thought-out staffing plan could be proposed in the coming years to more prudently address declining enrollment over time. MMS is grappling with behavioral issues and bullying alongside high levels of anxiety and mental health challenges among our students. The next two classes to arrive at MMS are the students who were remote during critical early education years of kindergarten and first grade. We are still assessing the impact that COVID had on these young learners in terms of social emotional challenges and learning loss. There's also no denying that there has been a significant rise in the levels of testing and IEPs. Given this backdrop, why would we reduce 7 student-facing faculty members now? These individuals play crucial roles in supervision, support, and engagement, which can most notably impact our students struggling the most, but affects the school climate for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Gulai, be Amy Reed and then Nicole Sweeney.
Hi, Gulai Philip, residing at 50 Deepwood Road. I'm speaking as co-vice chair of the Middlesex Parent Association. There's going to be some overlap with the high school and CDSP because we want to relay the similar concerns our Middlesex parents have as well. We appreciate the valid reasons raised to have an additional assistant principal in the Middlesex building, but we worry that this addition may be coming at the expense of other administrative positions due to the very aggressive budget cuts elsewhere. We question the rationale of removing the Royal Langer chair, who is overseeing the implementation of new coursework in Mandarin at MMS. We feel the decision to eliminate this position that oversees new curriculum writing and supervision is ill-advised. In special education, we also support the change to a 12-month SCSS program director position. However, if the current elementary and secondary director positions are combined into a single director, one person may be stretched too thin with all the responsibilities and oversight required at the middle school level. Finally, many parents at MMS are also concerned by the proposal to combine the art coordinator and the director of music into a single position. In conclusion, we feel there are more questions than answers on how these administrative cuts and changes proposed in this year's budget would impact our students and staff at MMS. We are concerned these cuts jeopardize student achievement, place additional stress on educators, and diminish the quality of support services. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amy Reed. I live at 15 McLaren Road. I'm a co-chair of the Royal PTO along with Jess Newhouse, and we are here to voice our concern about a proposed modification to the budget at last week's Board of Ed meeting. On January 23rd, during the ad cut night, a board member made what felt like a last minute cut to elementary schools for RC9 or Royal, a principal reduction of 20% for what he called an accountability issue. At first, it wasn't exactly clear what this cut meant, even to the other board members who asked for clarity. Then it became apparent. He wants to cut our principal, Natasha Torrey's salary by 20%, based solely on Royal's school ranking by a news media outlet. This ranking was determined exclusively using teacher ratios and state test data from the 2021 school year, 3 years before Natasha was appointed principal. A ranking such as this does not reflect the multitude of factors that comprise a diverse school community And to be clear, it does not factor into a principal's compensation. This proposal sends a very disturbing message to some of our most important school leaders and is disparaging to the entire Royal community. It suggests a lack of support and a disregard for the education, credentials, and skills our principal holds. It also engenders a work environment that will fail to attract and retain the best educators. Moreover, this motion feels personal, targeted, and unfair. We've been reminded many times during these budget meetings that numbers equate to real people who will be affected. Natasha Torre is the heart of our school. She has dedicated her career to education and the last 12 years to working at Royal, first as an assistant principal and then interim principal in 2022. She has remained steadfast through challenging times, including multiple administrative turnovers and COVID. She was ultimately appointed as the permanent principal less than 1 year ago, and she has been remarkable. Her experience, knowledge, and professionalism have been a grounding force throughout her tenure. She is respected by the staff, students, and families with whom she interacts on a daily basis. Natasha is present and responsive, and we are lucky to have her at Royal. This budget proposal is in stark contrast to the way we claim to value our schools. We're fortunate to live in a town where people take pride in the reputation of our school system, a system that is only successful because of its strong educators, including specials teachers, aides, assistant principals, and principals. It is the board's responsibility to provide, not withdraw, resources and support to those who make our schools succeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nicole Sweeney, and then Diane Urban and Kristen Warner.
So I think you actually missed my name. I was supposed to be before Amy. Vanessa Donatello.
I don't have your name. Okay, all right, then maybe that was my mistake. My
Sorry,
apologies.
you're gonna have to listen to me.
I'll go
too.
back.
I'll be
Sorry,
quick.
go ahead. Sorry.
That's all right. My name is Vanessa Donatello, 15 Country Club Road. I currently serve as the co-chair for the Oxbridge Elementary PTO, but tonight I'm speaking on behalf of all 5 elementary PTOs to share feedback and concerns received from our representative parent communities. Thank you very much for this opportunity to voice our concerns, for your tireless commitment to our students' educational experience, and somewhat selfishly, for the possibility to skip my kids' bedtime antics tonight. Time's limited. I'll get straight to the point. We do not support the vast majority of the proposed 24-25 budget, but areas of particular concern are the proposed cuts to instructional aides, specials teachers, and the reorganization of the SESS administration. We feel that these decisions are being made in haste, looking solely at the bottom line first without a proper plan and consideration for the negative impact these changes will have on our students' overall educational experience, looking forward as they progress through grade levels. Throughout this budget season, it has been stated repeatedly that the proposed cuts will not have an impact on our students' educational experience. But to say that is to ignore the fundamentally important role that our instructional aides provide. Of course, we can all agree that additional building subs are necessary, but they are not an even trade for our instructional aides, as the budget suggests. Not to mention the fact that the budget is assuming we can even fill these building substitute roles, although we currently have 2 open that we have not been able to fill. To remove our instructional aides would place an undue burden on our teachers, whom we value most of all. I'll remind you that our current 3rd through 5th grade elementary population began their school during peak COVID. We cannot deny that the effects are starting to show through academic lag and behavioral problems. Our teachers, together with the support of our instructional aides, have worked tirelessly to help students adjust post-COVID. And to remove that additional support now would have a noticeable impact on our students' educational experience. Should you think I'm exaggerating, I invite you to ride an elementary bus to or from school with them one day. There's no better example of what happens when you remove the support of additional supervision than riding that bus. With respect to the proposed cuts to specialist teaching positions, should they go forward, it is inconceivable that it would not impact our students. From a parent perspective, our specialist teachers appear to already be spread very thin. The time they have with our students is limited. To have them split their time across schools only serves to further limit student access and place at risk the contributions that they provide to the respective school community through art shows, music shares, and other events that make each school feel unique. It's well known that our town places value in sports programs, and after last week's public comment, it can't be ignored that our students looking for an outlet through the arts do not feel as we hold them in the same regard. Finally, we are concerned with the proposed elimination of the SESS K-5 program director position. The question has been asked why this position is offered for elimination, but not the more expensive director of elementary education, which we do not support at all either. In response, it was said that it's critically important to have someone who can provide consistency and oversight across the 5 elementary schools so that there's coherence and implementation of curriculum and instruction. We could not agree more, which is why we are concerned that the special education program could potentially not have someone providing that same consistency and oversight. It is crucial that we maintain a unified approach for both special education and the general education populations. Thank you for your time.
Nicole.
Thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name is Nicole Sweeney. I live at 30 Richmond Drive, and I have 3 children at Oxbridge, one of which was in ELP the past 2 years. So tonight I am speaking on behalf of ELP's nascent PTO, which is a subsidiary of the Oxbridge PTO. The ELP program plays a crucial role in enhancing students' educational experiences and providing parents with a valuable resource for childcare. However, several concerns have been raised that need thoughtful consideration and action. First, we'd like to express gratitude to the administration for accommodating the preference of our parents to be able to choose between the 4 or 5 day attendance along with corresponding tuition adjustments. Within the context of this adjustment, we think it is important to point out the broader implications of a 5 day proposed program. Other districts are able to support a 5 day program because they employ a separate evaluation team. This team is solely dedicated to going out into the community in order to visit children in proximate schools to determine if they qualify for services, whether it be at the preschool level or when they enter kindergarten. There is no evaluation team in this budget. Additionally, we have observed challenges in communication within the parent community. A number of parents have expressed difficulties in administration returning phone calls as well as unanswered emails. This highlights a crucial need for an improvement in terms of engagement and responsiveness. There is also a question of how the proposed 5 day schedule will affect the rescheduling of services that are administered on Fridays. Parent meetings, which were typically held on Fridays, will also need a new schedule. These meetings are vital for teacher and parent communication. With regard to scheduling evaluations, when will these evaluations take place? How often will teachers need to be taken from their classrooms in order to fulfill these requests? Who will take over for these classes? One ELP substitute for the building has parents concerned. As the board debates the future of ELP, we hope they take these concerns into consideration. Specific and explicit answers will ensure that parents feel their voices have been heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then Kristen Warner and Jane Minnis after Diane.
Hi, Diane Urban, 10 Cramen Road. I'm speaking as DEI co-chair of CDSP. We share the concerns of parents and staff opposing cuts that may harm our district's functioning. Repeatedly, we have heard that teachers and aides are often overwhelmed with current responsibilities. Parents and students continue to report that school climate, particularly in the middle and high school, leaves some students feeling vulnerable, unsupported, and thus unable to access their education appropriately. The proposed staff reductions will only exacerbate this problem by reducing the number of caring adults, not only in the classroom, but that fill the spaces in between, where so much of students' sense of belonging is developed. Reductions in music, art, and foreign language staffing implies these disciplines are less essential. Without demonstrating equal priority, we risk neglecting the holistic development of our students and not fulfilling the vision of the graduate. And addressing rising special education needs, budget choices should avoid unintentionally stigmatizing our students and instead uphold our commitment to the success of every student. Chairperson Jill McCammon asked residents to speak about what they value, so I'll speak about mental health and efforts that foster a climate of inclusion and belonging. Many staff, students, and parents have expressed gratitude for the resources we've only recently put into place to support the well-being of our school community. Yet shockingly, this is an area of proposed added cuts. How could anyone forget the suicides that devastated our community or the stories students shared in recent years about bullying, anxiety, and overwhelm? A year or so of mental health initiatives doesn't magically eliminate the darker side of a competitive achievement and sports-focused culture that has shown to leave many students depleted or excluded. It persists. Darien's 2023 Thriving Youth Survey found that 1 in 4 high schoolers and 1 in 5 middle schoolers reported persistent sadness and hopelessness in the last year. Teens who identified as part of the LGBTQ+ community reported significantly more risk factors, and about 1 in 3 said they had considered suicide. These are not just numbers, these are our children. We have more work to do, not less, to ensure all students thrive. Improving school climate and students' mental health not only reduces costs and administrative burden, but also represents proactive measures rather than reactive ones. It is an investment that benefits everyone. In fact, hundreds of studies of more than 1 million students worldwide has shown that social emotional learning positively impacts students' academic achievement and overall school functioning. Acknowledging tough decisions are ahead, we urge the board to prioritize the vision of the Graduates Foundation, preparing well-rounded individuals for a successful future. Sufficient resources for the areas I've discussed here are essential to that goal, and we feel are lacking in the current budget proposal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Kristen Warner. I live at 411 West Avenue, and I'm the parent of a 7th grader at Middlesex. I'm here tonight to share my concerns about the proposed cuts to the music program. Eliminating teachers at the elementary schools will require music teachers throughout the district to take on additional responsibilities throughout the school day, limiting their time with students. These changes are of particular importance to me because my daughter is most motivated by the chance to study music. I've witnessed firsthand the magic of Darien's music department. I watched John Hanley teach 3rd graders to play the violin over Zoom and appreciated Krista DiPietro's skill in introducing 4th and 5th graders to wind, brass, and percussion instruments in the aftermath of COVID. Last year, Jim Carter met with my daughter every Tuesday during her flex period to teach her how to play the French horn, in addition to teaching her the trumpet in band class. Matthew Curley spends early mornings many times a week working with groups such as the Jazz Ensemble and Honor Band, also that kids like my daughter have the chance to develop their skills and begin to see themselves as musicians. If the proposed cuts are approved, our dedicated music teachers will be stretched even thinner than they already are, and their ability to offer the wonderful music education that they currently provide will certainly be compromised. The art and music programs are so important to kids who may not excel in sports or academics, and I would hate to see their opportunities to shine diminished as a result of the proposed cuts. The mission of the Darien Public Schools is to inspire a love of learning in all students, and the health of your music program is essential to meeting that goal. Please reconsider cutting music teachers. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
After Jane will be Caitlin Irvin and then Becky Parna.
Good evening. My name is Jane Minnis. I'm the director of the Darien High School Orchestra and also a string teacher at Royal School. I'm a resident of Norwalk, Connecticut. Good evening, Dr. Adley and members of the Board of Education. I'm here tonight to express my concern for the reduction in staff in the music department, specifically the string program. As a product of the Darien string program myself, I know firsthand the importance of the music education program in the Darien Public Schools. I have been a string teacher in the district now for 27 years. I have watched the Darien string program grow from less than 250 students when I first started to one now with close to 600 string players. This year, our third grade string program has the highest enrollment of 238 students since 2017, a notable feat since the pandemic. When I first started teaching at Darien High School, the orchestra had 12 students. It now averages 70 per year. In the past, the FTE for instrumental music staffing was calculated at 35 students per day in pull-out lesson groups of 4 to 6 students. With the proposed cut, lessons would grow to 10 to 12 students, which undermines the purpose and fidelity of the type of instruction needed in a lesson. At the elementary level, small group lessons allow for personalized attention and tailored guidance. Teachers can better understand the specific needs of each student, provide targeted feedback, and address individual concerns. This personalized approach accelerates the learning process and ensures a more comprehensive understanding of their instrument. If you reduce the music staff by the proposed cut, we will not be able to maintain the quality of the instrumental music program that we have had and will significantly reduce and restrict students' access to the opportunities that we have historically been able to provide. We would not be able to deliver the individualized instruction needed to have students perform at the level that families in Darien have come to expect. And any changes at the elementary and middle school level would have a significant impact all the way through to the high school music programs. I hope that you will continue to champion and support our music department and the musicians of tomorrow as you have in the past, and reconsider making cuts to our staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Betsy Kilmartin and I live at 8 Priscilla Lane.
I'm Caitlin Conroy. I live at 2 Old Stone Road.
I am the co-chair of Royal PTO Special Education Committee, which I have served on for the last 3 years. I have a 4th grade son outplaced, a 2nd grade son in Tier 3 SRBI, a kindergarten daughter who is also an SRBI and in the process of being evaluated for special education services. I have worked closely with our special education student service assistant principal, both this year and last, when this role was implemented. The individual in this role at Royal has truly been exceptional. We have started to bridge the gap at Royal because of this specific role. It has helped streamline the process, along with greatly improving the narrative and diminishing the stigma that sometimes comes with special education and student services.
I am the co-chair of the Royal PTO Special Education Committee. I have a daughter in 4th grade with an IEP and a daughter in 3rd grade who is SRBI and has recently been referred to a PPT. We are here tonight to express our deep concern and opposition to the board's proposal to cut 2 special education and student services elementary assistant principals, also known as SES APs. We firmly believe that reducing the number of assistant principals is not the right solution to address budgetary challenges, and we feel this cut will have detrimental effects specifically on the entire Royal community, not to mention a potential splintering across all elementary schools. 2 years ago, the Board of Ed approved the addition of the SES AP to each of the 5 elementary schools. Clearly, the board understood the logic for creating this position to address the growing need for specialized in-school administrators to ensure students with learning disabilities receive the invaluable services they require. We find it inexplicable that only 1 year since its instatement, the board is suggesting to cut 2 SES APs, when in fact, the necessity for this position is ever present and growing at Royal. This is a need to have position, not a nice to have.
Of the 335 students enrolled at Royal, 45% of our student population receives level of support. In addition to the general education classroom, this support includes services such as SRBI, multilingual learner support, special education services, or accommodations and modifications via a 504 plan. Furthermore, the Royal Administration has led 101 PPT-related meetings this school year to date. The reduction in the SESS AP role to a shared part-time position will have significant negative impact, not only on the students that receive the support services, but also to the entire Royal community.
While this data clearly justifies the needs for a full-time SES AP at Royal, the rationale goes deeper than just data. Let's be honest, as a parent, it's not easy to navigate the procedural complexities of a child receiving special education and support services, especially for elementary school families who are new to the process. It can be extremely overwhelming and an emotional time. With caseloads on the rise and administrators and teachers already spread too thin, it's deeply concerning that the board would suggest a cut of this nature. As parents of children who receive services, we have experienced a monumental improvement in communication, transparency, and overall accessibility since the institution of a dedicated full-time SES AP at Royal. It would be irresponsible of the board to propose we go backwards. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Becky, and then Jen Eldridge and Courtney Gray.
Good evening. My name is Becky Parnoff. I am a resident of Norwalk. Good evening, Dr. Adley and Darien Board of Education members. My name is Becky Parnoff, as I said, and I am a dedicated music education teacher in the Darien Public Schools for 16 years. I taught 13 years at Tokenique in general music and chorus, and for the past 3 years, I have been at Middlesex in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade chorus. I've also been involved in the middle school and high school extracurricular theater groups since 2015. Tonight, I would like to address concerns regarding the proposed elimination of 2.0 FTE positions from the music department. Many have already spoken to this point, that if cuts go through, it will have a detrimental effect on our students' music education and what the Darien community has come to expect from our performing ensembles. Though tonight, I will be speaking primarily to how this applies to Middlesex. One of the pillars of a successful music program is having dedicated staff members who know their students well and can support them through their middle school years. It is an age group who experiences both turbulent and formative moments. They benefit from strong relationships and challenges that can only be fostered by consistency and teachers that they trust. If 2 music positions are eliminated, we can assume that the holes will be filled by the remaining music staff, taking us away from our students and moving us off of our area of expertise. The students as a whole will suffer. The music department is unique in that the product of our work is directly visible by the public. The Darien community invites our groups to perform the national anthem, march in parades, sing for menorah and Christmas tree lightings, and much more. By having dedicated staff in one building, we are able to prepare advanced ensembles, which provide an added educational benefit to our students who play an instrument or sing. These groups meet before school, after school, during flex, during study halls. If a full-time music staff member is asked to become an itinerant teacher, they will no longer be able to effectively run these high-level performing ensembles. The quality performances that the community has come to expect will cease. Darien has been awarded one of the best communities for music education by the NAM Foundation, which, quote, recognizes and celebrates schools and districts for their support and commitment to music education and efforts to assure access for music for all students as part of a well-rounded education. But more importantly, our students say that their middle school experience was defined by their band, chorus, orchestra, and theater experiences. I personally have countless letters from students noting how important joining chorus was to them at their time at Tokenique and at Middlesex. And just this past weekend, I watched close to 100 middle schoolers embrace and cry after their final performance of Footloose. We hope that you will reconsider these proposed cuts and the potential negative impact on not just our music program, but the defining experience for literally hundreds of students during their time in the Darien Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Eldridge. I live at 81 Holmes Avenue. My husband and I were born and raised in Darien, and I've been an educator in New Canaan for 20 years. I'm here in support of adding back the 1.8 music FTE positions to the budget. And more broadly, I urge the board to think carefully about eliminating positions that have the greatest impact on our students, the people who work directly with our kids day in and day out, our teachers. In a time where our kids are coming to school more dysregulated, with more mental health concerns and less self-help skills, now is not the time to be making cuts to teaching positions. Unfortunately, the figures on your spreadsheets don't translate to the reality of the classroom. My sophomore has been playing violin since, oh, I'm getting emotional, since Miss Hanley turned those squeaky notes into music in 3rd grade. He continues to play at DHS. This year, when there weren't any sections of orchestra that would fit into the matrix, that
John,
would
stop,
fit into
stop the
matrix
timer.
of his
Just take a
schedule.
deep breath. It's okay.
I'm
We'll stop the
sorry.
timer. Don't apologize. It's okay. All right. We're talking about people. It's okay. All right.
When there weren't any
Go ahead.
sections of orchestra that would fit into the matrix of his schedule, not wanting him to give up his creative outlet, the connectedness and success he feels performing with his peers. Ms. Minnis's solution was to give up her planning time a couple days a week to meet with him. And this is not a unique situation. It's an example of what our teachers do for our kids every day. My middle schooler was involved in the musical this weekend, where 96 cast members and 35 crew participated. Our music teachers found a place for everyone who wanted to be a part of the show. They gave 131 kids the opportunity to feel connected to their peers, to put in hard work, to see the fruits of their labor and be cheered on by their community. You cannot have the same programs and the same quality of programming without the staff to support. And who will suffer? Shall we be reminded of the March 2023 mental health survey of our 6th through 12th graders, where 46 students reported having attempted suicide within the past 12 months. Over 25% of students that said they experienced persistent anxiety, and just under a quarter said they experienced persistent depression. Given the data from our own community, how can we make cuts to the arts, a place where so many of our kids feel accepted, connected, and accomplished? Through music, we give our kids an opportunity to struggle through something, make mistakes, to try and fail again and be successful. Music education is so much more than notes on a page. It's impossible to cut staff and not expect an impact on programming. Ms. Parnoff, next year when you're leaving MMS to go to Tokenique one day, Henley the next, eating lunch in your car, teaching from a cart in a classroom rather than a music room, unable to get to know those students because you're only there to teach a class and leave rather than be a part of the fabric of the school community, because that's what happens as traveling teachers. Are you going to feel supported, valued, respected? Are you going to have the bandwidth to hold space for 131 kids in the musical? You don't have to answer that. If we're not careful, if we don't value and support these teachers, they're going to leave. And they're going to go where they do feel valued and supported. And if we don't stand up and support the people who support our kids, we're going to lose them. And ultimately, the real losers are our children.
Thank you.
My name is Courtney Perret at 128 West Avenue. I stand before you today as a proud Royal parent of 9 years, a Middlesex parent of 3 years, a special education para for 5 months, and the biggest cheerleader you will ever find for all students, both inside and outside of Darien. As Amy Reed mentioned earlier, a board member suggested the cut of Natasha Torrey's salary by 20% due to ranking. This request is inappropriate, irrational, and disappointing on many levels. As Jill said earlier, we are, in so many words, we are not a pay-for-performance district, nor is the state. Ms. Torrey has been a consistent administrator in that building since I joined the community in 2015, and we have had 4 principals. According to EdSite on the Connecticut.gov website, Royal has shown a steady climb for the last several years and is in fact higher than the district average in reading and math. This request has taken the spotlight off what the board is called to do for our town, support education for our students. Mr. Brown, you owe Ms. Torrey, the Royal community, and frankly, the entire Darien community an apology. Ms. Torrey has been targeted and one might argue bullied in front of this town. This is totally unacceptable. Now, to focus on why we are here this evening, addressing the district budget. Darien is known for its amazing schools. Instead of cutting the budget for our schools, we should be increasing the budget. Increased taxes and reduced school budget doesn't make sense, nor does the purchase of an island for $85 million if cuts are needed. Are we saying land is more important than the education of our students? Our town needs to look in the mirror and face the truth. What do we value and where should we spend our money? It has been suggested, all the cuts that were mentioned tonight, I'm not going to go through it, less teachers at MMS, specials teachers, assistant principals, instructional aides, and on and on and on. All of these cuts are human resources. With a nationwide teacher shortage, an increase in student needs, let me say that again, an increase in student needs, should we be cutting positions? No, we need to be a district where teachers, staff, and administrators want to work. The culture of the school directly impacts the success of students, and the culture begins with the human resources inside the building. Board members and Dr. Adley, I urge you to return to the Darien Board of Finance and ask for additional financial support so we can maintain, or better yet, strengthen our schools, not take from them.
Okay, guys, I appreciate the desire to support speakers, but we just want to keep moving. So if you could limit it till the next person gets up there,
So the next,
we just
so we have
appreciate
Kim
it.
Swift, Laura Bremer, Lindsay Dock, for the next three.
Or a golf clap, that's fine too.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lindsay Dock. I live at 11 Torrey Hill Road, and I'm a ninth grader at Darien High School. As a member of the advisory board of Wave Strong, a friend and ally to many members of this community who battle and have felt the repercussions of mental illness, I'm here to urge the Board of Education not to cut funding of the Wellness Center and Ms. Judy Phillips, who so passionately and patiently runs it for the many students who benefit from it. The Director of Mental Health, Dr. Dad, must also remain in Darien Public Schools as a resource for teachers, families, and students. Never has there been a more important time to have these programs in our school, especially considering the tragedies that mental health has cost us in the last 2 years. The mental health of my peers is of utmost importance, and there is an urgent and crucial need for these programs. We cannot risk losing these. Our students and community deserve them. Thank you.
There's going to be a theme here. My name is Laura Bremer. I live at 25 Hillcrest Avenue in Darien. I'm the mother of 3 kids, 2 recent graduates of DHS and a current junior. I am also a founder of the Wave Strong Foundation. My husband and I have quietly raised our kids in Darien for the past 20 years. We aren't squeaky wheels. I've never been to a Board of Ed meeting, let alone speak at one. We've pretty much had our heads down like many of us as we have navigated the bubble that exists in this town. But that changed for us in the spring of 2022 when that bubble burst and we lost 2 beautiful boys with bright futures to suicide. We quickly realized that we are not immune to the mental health crisis sweeping across our country. We can no longer keep our heads down and think this kind of thing doesn't happen here. And if we don't do everything we can to help our kids, make no mistake, it will happen again. We have made progress since that spring with the appointment of Dr. Dad, the establishment of the Wellness Center and the staff. The thought of even one child suffering in silence should be enough for us to take action. But we aren't just talking about one child. We are talking about hundreds of kids based on the recent Thriving Youth data, which has been shared tonight, but I'm going to highlight a few more. We have hundreds of kids in the high school and the middle school reporting persistent sadness, hopelessness, and anxiety. 388 teens said they felt so sad and hopeless for 2 weeks in a row or more that they stopped doing their usual activities. Over 450 teens said they were so anxious every day for 2 weeks, they stopped doing their unusual activities. And 163 kids shared they have seriously considered suicide, with many of them actually making a plan. These stats keep me up at night. They should keep us all up at night. We need the guidance and strategy of our mental health director, Dr. Alicia Dad, who we've barely given enough time to make progress, to ensure our kids, teachers, and administrators have the tools and support they need. We need to provide our kids with safe spaces like the Wellness Center to decompress and seek comfort. Our kids need to hear from us and from all of you that their mental health and well-being is a top priority. We are responsible for helping our kids navigate often dark and difficult journeys. And what we should be asking ourselves is how much more do they need? What can we take away? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Swift, and I live at 177 Leroy Avenue. I've lived in town for 25 years, and life for me is now defined as before or after March 31st, 2022. I've never spoken at a Board of Ed meeting, and the irony is all my kids have graduated from DHS. Yet that hasn't stopped me and many others from dedicating the last 22 months to helping each and every kid in this community. So I guess you could say I still have kids in the school system. So here I am with a question for the board. Why would you pick the two most critical and important programs we have in this town as a cut in the budget? Why would you extinguish something that was created with a lot of hard work during multiple tragedies to help each kid in this community just 22 months ago? When almost every school in the country is adding mental health programs, why would the highly touted top Darien school system abolish it? I know I won't get any answers to my questions because there aren't any good ones. There is no reason or justification to rid ourselves of the one thing every single kid needs. And even suggesting the cuts scares them. Our kids are in crisis, and they need all of us now. I was going to state all the stats, but then I realized you should know them. And if you don't, you shouldn't be on this board. The suggestion of a cut does nothing but spread darkness when your role is to shine light for our kids. The action is irresponsible, reckless, and dangerous. What do you say to the kid who is struggling and sees this cut? What does that tell them? They don't matter. That you don't care. What if that was your kid? What if that was your younger self? What about these kids here tonight that showed up to ask you why? And why can't the adults in the room do better? I wish more than anything in the whole world that we could go back to March 30th, 2022. I wish our beautiful boys were doing homework and hanging out with their friends. And I wish their families were still whole and their friends were free of grief and pain. So let's do better for them and for every child who needs the help and support to navigate the difficult days ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the next three are Susan Marks, Beth Lane, and Carolina McGoey.
Good evening. My name is Susan Marks, and I live at 39 Fairfield Avenue. I'm a member of the RTM, but tonight I'm speaking as a 34-year Darien resident and the parent of 2 Darien High School graduates. Thank you all for serving on the Board of Education. I know it's a very difficult job. Last time I spoke at a Board of Ed public hearing was probably in 2004. After listening, never thought I'd be here. After listening to Board of Ed meetings this year, I felt it necessary for the board to hear from an empty nester. There are approximately 7,300 households in Darien. I stand here tonight as one of the roughly 4,700 households that do not have children in the Darien Public Schools. Simply said, approximately 64% of all Darien households do not have children attending the school system. That may surprise many of you, but it is the reality. One of the major reasons I moved to Darien was the great public school system. I support education in Darien and I support our teachers. I understand education has changed in many ways over the past 20 years, but the reality is this budget increase is not sustainable. Discussions should continue with board priorities, and board policies must be followed now more than ever. The Board of Education has hundreds of policies. If they're not followed, why do you have them? Would it be fair to cherry pick what policies the board should follow and which ones you should ignore? Not every board member may agree or like the policies, but that is not up for debate right now. To be 100% clear, I have supported the Darien Public School System and I want to continue to support it. What I can't support are unrealistic operating budget increases. As you're discussing the adds and cuts, please ask yourself, will this decision hold up against your board's approved policies? Your policies give you facts to use, not opinions, which can vary from one board member to another. Specifically, if supporting class size policy at Middlesex means a reduction in staff, then that is what is needed. One of your primary roles as a Board of Education member is to follow/enforce your own board's policies. I know this is very difficult, but it's critical to the budget process and the only way to be objective and fair to all. Thank you and good luck with your decision.
Thank you. Oh, Beth.
Good evening. My name's Beth Lane, 16 Hillcrest Avenue. And I wanted to talk about something slightly different than everybody else has been talking about, which is specifically Mr. Maroney's suggestion regarding the athletics budget of a 70%, 30% split for all sports teams rather than just for the 4 sort of unique ones that we do that with now. I realize that there are probably a lot of people who are not excited about that prospect. I thought that it was worth exploring. It would reduce the athletic budget. In addition, it would help us with some of the inequities that we've been discussing since I started paying attention to Board of Education meetings 10 years ago. Nothing has really happened. Everybody knows that there are some teams that end up getting more support than other teams, and some teams cut and some teams don't. And we've gone around and around in circles for a very long time. And while this might create some new problems, I think it's worth thinking about further, possibly not for this budget year, but it certainly has merit to discuss. So I just wanted to say that I support Mr. Maroney's idea and think it merits further thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
After Caroline, it'll be Will Moore and then Ryan Marty.
Hello, everybody. Carolina Magoy, 20th Kensett. Miss you all. I've been closely following the budget process for 8 years as a member of the RTM. I've spoken in front of the board and admin countless times. I'm no longer in the RTM, and I decided that my limited free time is of better use in other efforts, but I'm shocked at what I'm seeing during this cycle. From the initial unveiling of what the administration is proposing as cuts, to the efforts from members of the board to make sense of those proposals, to attempts from said members to find their own cuts in order to present a lower annual percentage increase, it's all shocking. And the proposals of what to cut, either from the administration or from individual board members, are alarming. Languages are fundamental in this day and age, and most of the colleges our students apply to expect 4 years of language from core curriculum, even though in the eyes of DPS, this is an elective for our high school students. It is not really an elective, and what our chair has done since she joined the school has been remarkable. Cutting her position will be a massive mistake. And talking about massive mistakes, it seems to me that somehow we are now suffering from short-term memory loss or denial, as the position of wellness coordinator and director of mental health were just added in our prior budget cycle to our schools at a time where our students, our teachers, and our administrators were basically screaming for their top of their lungs the need to start providing sustainable and professional mental health support in our schools. The fact that the proposal of cutting these positions is even on the table speaks volumes to what our priorities as a town and board members are. I personally come from a family where 3 people died by suicide from mental illness. We cannot afford to experiment with cuts from the budget that would impact this particular area. We waited long enough to add them. We literally cannot afford to remove them because the implications will be so much worse than the possibility of having raised our taxes. Borrowing the words of a mental health expert in town, toxic stress impedes learning. Anxiety, depression, adverse experience can also impede learning. Toxic culture impedes learning. Mental health is a foundational part of learning. This is a non-negotiable and should be treated as one. And talking about mental health, you can read study after study about the impact that music and the arts have on it. Any cuts that will impact our magnificent music and art programs will be nothing but detrimental to our students' mental health, not to mention the fabulous shows that they put up. I don't have the time to get into other cuts that impact the middle and elementary school. And as someone who only now has a DHA student, I won't go there, but please understand that these dart throwing to find cuts in all our schools make no sense and are indefensible. We knew that we would be facing a very tough budget season, and sadly, there is very little fat where you can make cuts that will impact significantly on a dollar base, but the impact that probably is intangible in the short and medium term will end up costing us a lot more than we can even dare to think. Our students will suffer, our teachers will suffer, and our admins will suffer. An island is nice and all, but our students, our school constituents, our teachers and administration are way more important than those 60 acres. Let's make sure our priorities are where they need to be. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Will Moore. I live at 5 Parsons Walk, and I'm a 7th grader at Middlesex Middle School.
And I'm Ryan Marty. I live on 3 Stanton Road, and I'm a 7th grader at Middlesex as well.
We would just like to say a few words about our experiences with the music program at Darien Public Schools. First off, I want to say that music has turned me into the person that I am today, and I have all the amazing music teachers in our schools to thank for that. They have always treated each and every student with kindness and care. They always show 110% effort and make each class or program special. My experiences have ranged from musicals, most recently Footloose this past weekend, and MTW's SpongeBob this past summer, to honors chorus with Camerata, and the past 2 years playing piano and singing in the Young Composers Concert. The Darien music programs have provided life-changing experiences that I'm forever grateful for. Also, the friends that I have made through the music programs are some of my closest, and I know that it is the same for many others. Music provides creativity and freedom for many kids and lets you just forget about the everyday struggles that we all face. I am not surprised that Darien was awarded the Best Communities for Musical Education by the National Association of Music Merchants Foundation in 2023. I truly believe our town has earned it. The music programs and teachers in this town have changed my life and the lives of many others in a remarkable way that I hope will continue for the next generations.
Music is such an important part of my life and so many other people's lives, and is because of the amazing opportunities given to us students through the schools. Participating in these music programs has forever made an impact on my life, and I know it has on so many others. It wouldn't be the same if I was only able to be in one branch of music or not be able to do any music at all. I would have never changed into the person I am today if it wasn't for these extra ensembles such as Camerata and Honors Band that have forever benefited me. Along with being in the theater for 2 years at the middle school, which I would have never been interested in if it wasn't for the superb teachers at DPS encouraging me to try something new and become a part of these opportunities. Our town is so focused on sports and academics that music is our only escape, our only time to be creative and find our true selves, to inspire others and be inspired by others. For many, music is the only time people can be themselves and truly open up, which massively improves their mental health, which is already an ongoing issue in this day and age. No person in this town would ever be the same if it wasn't for the amazing music curriculum here in Darien Public Schools, along with the amazing teachers. And I am and always will be grateful for what it has done for me. Thank you.
Our next three are Madeline Domino, Andrew Tishman, and Grace Sandoval. So Ms. Domino.
Hi, good evening. Sorry, I didn't know to bring something written, but my name is Andrew Tishman. I live at 78 Holmes Avenue, neighbor. I have a son in Middlesex Middle School. I am a repeat offender. I did live in Darien from 2009 to 2013. My daughter went to middle school in Middlesex, 8th grade, and then all of Darien High School. I then transferred to Florida for my job, lived in Florida for 10 years. My son was about to go into middle school, and I could never get out of my head how good the Darien school system is. Although I grew up not far from here in Scarsdale, New York, and I went to school there, but Darien had something that I could not forget, which was the impeccable quality of the education. And I said, if my daughter can get through school, my son can also. So I decided I was glutton for punishment. I wanted to pay state tax again, and I wanted to live in a house half the size that I was living in Florida. But in today's day and age, you need to prepare your children for the best and the worst in the world that's to come. Times have changed. And Darien's education, I always tell people, is the quality of a private school, the public schools. And my son in today's age, where he only wants to watch YouTube TV and play Roblox, to come to Darien and you have this musical program whereby children need to play a musical instrument. The school was instrumental. In 4 months, my son started to play an instrument. He took an interest in it, dedicated. He was in the Christmas concert playing the trumpet. And I mean, the whole move back to Darien for him to go to middle school and high school is worth it due to the quality of the education. And if it's not broken, don't fix it. The quality of teachers, the staff, and the dedication makes all the difference with the structure and organization that Darien has to offer. And I'm just gonna say this off the record. I mean, Darien is a highly coveted place to live. It's very expensive to live, and people come to make the sacrifice because of the quality of education in Darien. So I ask you, try and keep as much of the programs as you can. And music is something that every single child should have the exposure to and experience, because it teaches them dedication and discipline and distracts them from everything else in the world that's terrible today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madeline Gamino? Is there, it's Gamino? Yeah, you were, sorry, you were before Mr. Tishman. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't hear.
It's okay.
Just gotta prepare something. Good evening. My name is Maybelline Amino. I live at 12 Ledge Road. I have two boys at Royal, a 4-year-old son, and one on the way. I am originally from Mexico, grew up in New York City, and chose Darien because, like many of us, of the school system. I have prepared a short recording from the Oscar-nominated documentary, The Last Repair Shop, to help me get my points across. It spoke to me regarding this year's budget and the importance of what music and the arts bring to all of our children, regardless of where it will take you in life. An instrument can be an outlet for a child who is going through a stressful situation, or a way for them to escape to a soothing mechanism. Sometimes a human being can give you what music and the art of playing can provide at a given point. My son has fallen in love with the violin. Please consider to keep our music, special ed, mental health, and arts department fully funded without any cuts. This clip is less than 2 minutes, but I highly suggest being watched in full. I hope I can play.
If I didn't have my violin from school, I would probably, I don't know what I would do. Don't even jinx me with that.
My mother and father were both musicians, and my mom taught me music is like swimming. It's constantly in the moment. And there's no music. Whatever you do, don't stop. Keep going. No matter how bad of a train wreck it is, just keep going. Don't quit. Don't give up.
When I was 3 years old, my dad taught me how to play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star on the piano. I actually vividly remember that. I've been playing the piano for like 9 years now. You know, I just have a connection with it. You know, I'm getting emotional. I've just been playing for a while, playing for a long time. Mental health is something that's like very hard to manage sometimes, especially if like everything that's going on in your life, like school and thinking of what you want to be. It's very stressful sometimes. I guess I'm just scared of like failure, you know? Like I'm scared like I won't like find a purpose in life. But once I go on stage, all that tension goes away. When you play on stage, you have like this overwhelming presence, and like, you know, the audience is like somewhat like attracted to it, you know? Everyone's just watching you, and you feel a certain power.
Again, it's an Oscar-nominated documentary, The Last Repair Shop. Please, if you haven't watched it, watch it, and it'll help you, you know, take a look into this, and hopefully you guys can keep everything in place. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Grace, and then Laura Pashgray and Jen Keating.
Hello, board. My name is Grace Sandoval. I reside on 22 Timber Lane. I'm a junior at the high school and have been in the public school since kindergarten. I stand before you to speak on what my friends and mentors have also raised, the health of Darienne's music program. Growing up at Oxbridge Elementary, the pinnacle of my school week were the days in the music room, interacting with my music teacher, Mr. Allen, and losing myself in the joy of creating music. Outside of the classroom, I would join our school's honor choir, and every week I'd be dropped off at Royal to participate in our honors town choir. Moving up to the middle school, I found my grounding in the community of choir class, theater, and the vocal groups Viva Voce and Camerata. In high school, I found myself in choir and Theater 308. All of these activities were run by Darien music teachers. I've been formed and founded by my musical mentors, Mr. Allen in elementary, Miss Sadler and Coach O'Donnell in middle school, and now Mr. Andrade and the advisors of Theater 308 at the high school. I've mentioned music a lot, haven't I? But the irony is the most vital learning that happens in the class wasn't how to read notes or staffs. It was the development of my confidence from learning how to perform and reach an audience. My time management and discipline from learning to practice music, my team spirit founded in being a part of a group producing something beautiful. Additionally, I got a release from the confusion and stress of growing up through the avenue of music. I wouldn't be as full of a person without musical education being the solid, steady resource it was when I was in elementary school. If music teachers become itinerant figures in the lives of our elementary schoolers, students may lack the connections with their teachers necessary for real engagement. With the proposed demands on remaining music teachers, it's hard to imagine teachers will have the time to run the outside groups that I had access to. Students may be turned off from music, and fewer will have the confidence and skills to join Darien High's music and theater offerings. My life is saturated with music, but my peers whose passion is in sports or other activities all receive the same development as me through access to music and music teachers. I can't imagine the difference in their character if they lacked these opportunities. A reduction in our music department is a reduction in our school's education and a change in our school environment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Laura Peshgray. I live at 11 Parsons Walk. I have two twin boys at Middlesex in 8th grade. Thank you for all the people that came out and spoke tonight. It's been truly incredible. And I want to thank everybody here for listening and not cutting people off. Thank you. The budget process is about cutting and shifting dollars to help areas that need it. But the art coordinator salary is simply being shifted to the music director. This is not creating efficiency or benefit. It is just burdening the music director with additional responsibilities that are out of her expertise and preventing her from growing her department. Please don't change something that's not broken. Actually, a well-oiled machine with results, awards, and high recognition. I want to thank Jacqueline de Montreval for basically writing this glowing article in Darien Living this month, January 2024. The title is Darien's Music Department Hits a High Note. In the article, it says, under Thompson's stewardship, the music program has been honored as one of the best communities for music education by National Association of Music Merchants, the largest music platform in the world. This distinction is awarded to districts that demonstrate outstanding achievement in providing access to music education for all students K through 12. Would she be able to do this if she was given the art department coordinator responsibility too? I doubt it. The community and the Board of Ed members have asked repeatedly for a schedule to see how cutting 1.8 FTEs will impact our stellar music program. When we cut 2 music teachers, they will be spread thin. On paper, all basic programs may be intact, but extras such as young composers, preparing students for Western regionals and honors festivals, jazz ensembles, honors band, honors orchestra, all these extras, which many students love, as you've heard tonight, will be gone. Don't underestimate these extras. They inspire and provide foundations and building blocks for our future. Although my twins have been taking private lessons and studying music since they were 3 years old, they started kindergarten at Holmes Elementary and they were inspired by young composers. They came to me and said, "Mommy, how do I compose?" I had no idea. But Ms. DePietro basically helped them, took time after school in the 1st grade, and they both, one of them made it in kindergarten, which was a travesty because the other one really wanted it, but they both finally made it in 1st grade. The article goes on to say the music department is well supported by central office, the BOE, and the community. Dr. Adley sends out his weekly communication and often highlights theater, music, and arts. Music is considered a core subject area. They fund the arts fully, says Ms. Thompson. Please don't let the statement no longer be true. Alexandra was quoted in this article. Music is so important in this world, and this program sparks the flame that is an inspiration for the young students of Darien. My son, William Gray, was quoted saying that he's been in rockestra, honors orchestra, and this program has allowed him to be in one of the best chamber groups he's ever been part of. Dr. Adley, I know the music department has made you proud, and I appreciate you utilizing the quintet that my twins were a part of and feature them at high-profile events like your retirement party for all those educators that retired and the top student honors at the Board of Ed reception. Please cut other areas, but not art and music. Remember, music and the arts satisfies the core values of the portrait of the graduate by opening and welcoming diversity and inclusion, such as neurodiversity, as well as students like John Roscoff that was accepted into Yale, a program that, according to 2021 stats, there's like a 5.3%
Laura,
admittance.
we've let you go an
Don't
extra
compromise
minute.
this amazing success. Please reconsider your budget decisions and cut other areas. Thank you.
Jen Keating and then Tori Havoc and Willow Buscemi. And the last one that we have on signed up is Curtis Butler.
Hi, how are you? My name is Jen Keating, 1 Chasmars Pond Road in Darien. I have a college freshman, DHS 23, and 11th and 8th graders at Darien Public Schools. I appreciated what our finance chair was saying about finding efficiencies and respecting the taxpayers' wallets. But I think for many of us, the question is what, or rather who, falls by the wayside when we talk about efficiency and how we can consider not just the mainstream, but the fringe of the DHS in doing so. First, I want to reiterate my support for music and art and my vehement objections to the cuts. Last week, I was concerned I went too far sharing how my freshmen didn't feel valued at DHS despite being involved in music and theater, and how devaluing these programs furthers that belief. And Katie suggested I didn't go hard enough. Music and art are havens and inspirations for our kids, and I beg you not to cut them. But I'm back to actually talk about world language. In today's globalized world, I am baffled that cutting the chair has even been suggested. There's almost no future job for our children that doesn't involve understanding world language and culture. World language unlocks doors to better colleges, better jobs, better opportunities. It is a program deserving of at least as much leadership, focus, and priority as other core curricula. I have firsthand seen this incredible program in effect. My oldest was at the start of world language K through 12, studying Spanish since her first days at Tokenique. I speak nothing save a bad rendition of Sweet Georgia Brown in Polish. So imagine my surprise when our family was volunteering at Coats for Kids, a program that delivers winter coats to young children in need. A young girl came in shopping for a coat. She spoke no English, nor did her parents. And I watched my child bend to her knees and float into seamless Spanish. Que colore te gusta este? A small child left beaming because she not only found a coat, she felt connection and value. I have since seen my kids and their peers do the same magic time and again, thanks to the curriculum developed by our world language chair. Whether it Coats for Kids, with special needs athletes at Challenger Baseball, with a patient on a post 53 call, or for my sports fans on the board, my son's teammates smirking their way off the soccer pitch because they understood the opposing team chirping at them. World language is a connection to people we may not otherwise connect with. It's enabling everyone's success by the grace of being from a community that can afford to broaden our children's horizons. A department chair is a subject matter expert who guides a meaningful program to grow our small humans into brilliant adults. Art and music are not the same. World language has no equivalent. I fear this budget is making cuts not only to salaries or positions, but to our children's passions, potentials, and futures. When you vote, please don't think of cutting an eighth of a music position. Think of cutting a future composer. And don't just think of cutting world language roles. Please imagine the little girl at Coats for Kids minus her future translator. Thank you.
Thank you.
I am folks, hold on one second. There's a picture that's about to fall behind you. So just be careful of that. If you could maybe somehow, yeah, sorry, I just didn't want to, thank you.
Hi, I'm Tori Havik. I live at 16 Hamilton Lane. I just want to echo a couple of things. I know it's been late, that a lot of other people have already pretty eloquently put it. In world language, I just want to point out the large amount of sort of accepted research on the vast benefits of children's growth and exposure to multilingual environments, especially below 6th grade. So that's really important. We've seen kind of very firsthand how that's really valuable and clearly having a major impact on our kids. And music and performing arts, I mean, the kids and the teachers here have put it better than I could possibly put it. Music made me who I am for sure as well. And so you just look at those two things together and you worry that it's a very slippery slope. Cuts to the budget of performing arts and humanities are hard won. I think there were 12 people in the orchestra a number of years ago and it's 75 now. That is earned very difficultly. That doesn't come back tomorrow if we change our minds next year. And I really worry, we've heard like the bubble bit spoken a few times before. Connections to world language, connections to Broadway, which is 40 miles from here. We want to foster an environment where our kids have that feeling of connection to the world. The world is becoming more multilingual and more connected. And I worry that with these cuts, we're going to cut our kids off from being able to be more part of the larger portions of the world. So please just, consider that. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Willow Buscemi of 37 Du Bois Street, and I haven't been here for 10 years. So I have something that's been on my heart for the last 10 years that I want to mention, but it's going to be my number 2 comment. My number 1 comment is I come to you on behalf of the music program as a former substitute teacher, and that I did not realize when I started substitute teaching what a unique vision of the entire school it is, because you're the only one that gets to pretend you're that teacher and then pretend you're that teacher, and you get a much broader view than anyone else in this room of what's actually happening in the school. And I can tell you that at elementary school, music teacher is hands down literally the hardest job in the entire elementary school. I would bring 2 extra Advil. I would wear my lucky shirt. When that flashed up as I was a music teacher that day, I would sweat a little. So I'm just telling you, this isn't a place to mess around. In kindergarten, it was the first special that my son was kicked out of. Because guess what? You can't have 20 plus children trying to keep them at least alive, learn, teach a little bit of music, play your ukulele, and make sure the 5-year-old isn't flashing the lights on and off at the same time. It just can't happen. There has to be enough people in music to actually make the music happen, or it just doesn't happen. And then this is from somebody super not musical. My second point is, when I was here 10 years ago, a father stood up of a high schooler, and I was a parent of a kindergartner, and they said, a warning, a caution, and I give you the same warning and caution today. There is a pendulum in this town on special education, and it swings so far to one side and so far to the other side. And as budgets come around and as finances become a concern, it is a scary, scary time for special education. And we have to remember all of the illegal wrongdoings that happened before Shirley was ever here. And, keep in mind that all of the things that we can be doing for these kids that are with the law, that are with the parents, that are with the school district, and just keep it above board and do not screw around with special education. Thank you.
Curtis?
Good evening. I'm Curtis Butler. I reside at 137 Hollow Tree Ridge Road with my wife and 2 daughters, both of whom attend Darien High School. I am also a member of the RTM and the Education Committee of the RTM, but I'm here speaking on my own behalf. I have only 2 thoughts I want to share, and I will try to be brief. First, my first thought addresses fiscal responsibility. The comments from the chair of the Board of Finance would suggest that the administration's proposed increase is excessive and would be fiscally irresponsible, potentially resulting in the largest tax increase in the town's history. Managing a school district of this caliber must be extremely challenging, and overseeing the administration, as our Board of Ed does, must be similarly so. So I thank you for your hard work and commitment to the town's school children. The Board of Finance's guidance is closer to a 3% increase in next year's budget, while the administration is seeking an increase of over 6%. What is the right number? I don't know. And neither does anybody else in this room or in this town. I am all for fiscal discipline. I'm a taxpayer. But let's be honest, there's nothing magical about a 3 or 3.5% increase. It's arbitrary. And to suggest that passing this budget would be responsible for a record-breaking tax increase is simply disingenuous and factually incorrect. As Caroline McGooey already stated, this same Board of Finance only last spring approved a $100 million purchase of an island. So let's not forget, it's not just the education budget that we're talking about here. And let's not blame our school district or our schools for any potential tax increases which may result. We've made all kinds of decisions as a town. The second point I want to make relates to what seems to be a disproportionate focus on our languages and arts programs. When I first moved to Darien, I was working at JP Morgan at the time, and a colleague who lived here many, many years and who raised all his children here and they graduated from our high school said, wow, he knows my daughter's in a wheelchair. And he said, you're moving to a sports town. And that is absolutely the view of this town within and without. So when we consider cuts that will have to be made, and of course, decisions need to be made, and tough decisions and cuts need to be made, let's be more balanced about it. As a college rower and a painter, I can tell you that both sports and the arts have had an equally large effect on my life and on my success. So I thank you very much for the time and your attention.
Thank you.
So that's the last on our list. So are there any other people in the room that would like to speak?
We have just one more and then we'll go to Zoom.
Hi, my name is Amy Daniels and I live at 83 Locust Hill Road. I have a junior at the high school as well as a middle school daughter. I'm also the executive director of the Depot Youth Center and served as co-chair of the Thriving Youth 2023 survey. There are many hard decisions to be made in the current budget cycle. I do not envy the job that each of you has in terms of deciding what to keep and what to cut. That said, supporting the emotional well-being of our kids should not be on the table, especially during a national youth mental health crisis. With too many recent suicides in our community and a staggering amount of depression and anxiety being reported by our students, Darien is not immune to this. We have only just started making progress and changing the dialogue around mental health. We cannot shut the door that was just opened. Our kids and families need it too much. The Board of Education and our administration did a wonderful thing for our kids when they thoughtfully developed the Director of Mental Health role. Dr. Alicia Dad was a fantastic hire, and her collaborative nature has allowed her to partner in Darien schools with multiple community organizations so that we are all working together and no longer in silos. Dr. Dad presented to the board on September 26th and provided concrete updates on the 6 goals of the district's strategic plan and how the Director of Mental Health is helping to address them. If anyone is unclear on the impact that her role has had in such a brief time, I would encourage you to go back and rewatch that presentation. The Wellness Center at DHS has been making strides in providing our kids a much needed space for a deep breath during their busy academic and socially demanding and exhausting, quite frankly, days. It is helping kids, many times, many of our town's most vulnerable kids. The wellness coordinator role is an important part to make this program work. And we'd be moving backwards if we eliminate this program or this position. We would be sending a message to our students that we don't care about their wellness and it is not a priority for us. I know, having watched this board for so many years, that is simply not the case. Thanks to each of you for volunteering your time and your expertise to serve students in our community. I am confident you'll be able to find ways to adopt a balanced budget that won't put the mental health of Darien's kids at risk. The emotional well-being of our kids should not be on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, Michelle, we'll move to Zoom.
Barry Palmer, you are unmuted and recognized.
Good evening, Barry Palmer, Danbury. I'm the Teachers Union president. I have a hard time believing anyone on the Board of Education or the Board of Finance is surprised by the impact of the new contracts that they have on the budget. I think we can all do math, and we had this understanding when we were at the negotiations table. Higher contracts means higher budgets. The Board of Finance's 3% guidance ignores that reality. What's worse is the recruitment and retention efforts that both the unions and the board negotiated in good faith have been damaged, but quite a bit by this budget process already. We're looking for the board's leadership to right that wrong. I do agree with Mr. Palin that financial stewardship and high quality programming can coexist. Unfortunately, this budget provides neither. We're now going on 3.5 hours of public comment in the past 2 weeks in opposition to this budget. We're not doing this because it's fun. I can tell you, I can think of a lot better ways to spend my Tuesday nights than watching board meetings. We're doing this because we know that this budget will impact programming. This isn't an opinion. We know it. The staff, the parents, the students are telling you this is going to impact programming. It just is. You can't simultaneously say you support mental health and school safety while also cutting the arts and undermining the team model at the middle school. You just can't. All the directors in the world you hire will not address the needs of our students if you undermine our programming in this way. I'll just finish with, I double checked the board policy on class size. There is language in that policy that allows for discretion in meeting the needs of our students. So I think we can all rest easy that we can do right by our students without violating board policy. I'll leave you with that. Thank you.
Thank you. John Raskoff, you are unmuted and recognized.
Good evening, everyone. Hi,
Welcome back,
John. How's it-
John, you muted yourself.
Classic. How's it going? Hi, John Raskoff, 60 Andrews Drive. I know most of you on the board. I miss you all very much. I hope you're all well. I want to say hi to Swaha and Brenna. You're doing a great job. For context, I'm a recent graduate of DHS, a former student representative on this board, and a current music major at Yale. There are several things I would like to say, but I'll try to be brief. As has been said already, the reduction in music teacher FTEs will put teachers in the position where they need to travel between schools, meaning they will be less available for students who need them throughout the day. There are many things that teachers do outside of teaching classes, and this is especially apparent for music teachers whose relationships with students directly impact students' performance in their ensembles, in their classes, the relationships between students. Those are the kind of things that directly impact performances on stage. Teachers teach extra lessons. They're there to talk. Their rooms are available. I know in my 13 years in the DPS system, I easily spent, an aggregate of more than a week total of my time outside of class, just in music rooms, talking with music teachers, talking about rep, having random conversation. And those kind of things are imperative to, I think, my development as a musician, the development of any music student. They helped me grow my emotional resilience, my maturity. I had so many meaningful conversations with these teachers. And if they're in multiple places at once, essentially, they won't have any time to develop meaningful relationships like those. Now, a few more unorganized comments, because there's quite a lot on this chopping block here. I honestly believe that creating one unified visual and performance arts department is not that bad of an idea. On paper, the prospective coordinator will have to manage a lot more things, but I have always been, appalled at the lack of communication between the arts and the music department. I've never done any collaboration as a music ensemble with a visual artist. I think it would be really interesting if we could do some sort of, integrate art more into the concerts, integrate music, especially into digital photography, film classes. I think there's talk of, introducing a whole bunch more classes, such as, for example, theatrical technical design, which implements both elements of art and elements of music. And I think having them under one unified umbrella would certainly be beneficial. I have no doubt that the department head would be able to overcome any small things that would be associated with learning about the art department and its needs and requirements. And I have no doubt that the current art department coordinator would be able to provide any insight to the music department coordinator, who would, then oversee both. Next, commenting about FTE reductions at MMS. I think it makes no sense to undermine the team structure. I've experienced it. It makes a lot of sense. It cohorts well. I think if the board wants to modify this convention, it should really be prepared to instigate a more comprehensive scheduling overhaul to facilitate simultaneously the regulation of the number of students per class, and I think the necessary existence of cohorts. I know there were certain classes that I was in where there were a few students from a separate team, and they, and my sense of it was they just completely did not feel like part of the group because everyone else already knew each other. I think you cannot stress enough the importance of having students who know each other, who all have the same teacher, who can all talk about the same teacher they have together. That's all super important. Next, the world language coordinator, I think, is an essential role, especially because your proposed solution is 3 decentralized ones, one for elementary, middle, and high. That doesn't make sense, especially considering what we know is it's only going to increase the importance of world languages for students in school. We know most colleges now require a whole bunch of language, and also in life, it's extremely important. I see no reason why instruction should be not completely viewed as linear from start to finish. I agree with Beth Lane.
John
Yes.
Raskoff, you're actually a minute over. Can you wrap
Okay,
up?
thank you.
All
Bye.
right, thank you. All right, thank you, sir.
Shannon Day, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, everyone. I'm Shannon Dye. I live at 11 Thomasina Lane. I have 2 children in the Darien school system, a senior at Darien High School and an 8th grader at Middlesex Middle School. I have spent my entire school career in the Darien Public Schools, having attended homeschool, Middlesex, and graduated DHS in the class of 1993. I'm speaking tonight to strongly encourage you not to consider or pursue any reduction of mental health services or providers for this budget season. It is highly concerning to our community of parents that these mental health resources are even up for discussion. These are important resources to our students. Let us not forget that our community and school system have experienced tremendous tragedy and loss, that our courageous students and community begged and pleaded for action and supports just only 2 short years ago, and that this work has only just begun. Please also remember that you voted to implement these resources because you believe there was a true need. That need has not changed or gone away. We don't need another tragedy to tell us that supporting our students' mental health is a marathon, not a sprint. Dr. Dad is the right person for this work, but it takes time and commitment. She simply has not had sufficient time to effect real and sustainable change. I encourage you to again review the data from the Thriving Youth March 2023 Darien Youth Survey that clearly tells us that we need to continue to support our students' mental health and well-being. Too many children in our community are struggling, starting at a younger age. Our students have told us plainly what their challenges are: bullying, feeling excluded, gender identity, risky behaviors and substance use, isolation, suicidal ideation, eating disorders, depression and anxiety, and chronic stress, just to name a handful. Our high-pressure, competitive academic and athletic environments only amplify these common challenges, and the proposed budget cuts would severely limit our ability to foster resilience in our students as they face these challenges. Are you aware that the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention just this month recognized the Darien community at their national meeting in Orlando for the mental health work that the Wave Strong Foundation and the Darien community are doing together? The Darien community has set an example of coming together, and the Connecticut AFSP chapter director, Michelle Peters, attributes the progress to the multi-front efforts taking place in the community and within our schools, supported by the DHS Wellness Center and Dr. Dad's work. We have just started making progress. If we eliminate these positions, what message does that send to our students and to our community about our commitment to their mental health and wellness? Their well-being is everything, and their success as students depends on it. The challenges our students face aren't going away anytime soon, and neither should our resources to support them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen Turcos, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, my name is Kristen Turcos. I live in Woodbridge, Connecticut, and I have been an elementary general music educator for 18 years, 13 of which have been in Darien. I'm asking the Board of Education to vote to add the 2 proposed cut music positions back into the budget for the next school year. Worthy of note is the fact that my 13-year tenure in the district was interrupted by a break to work in a community closer to home. After teaching 7 years at Royal School, I taught 5 years in a well-respected district near me in order to alleviate the treacherous daily commute to Darien. After these years, I decided to return to Darien as an itinerant music teacher to a community that values music education as a necessity, not just something kids do to give classroom teachers a prep period. Part of my decision to return rested heavily on the fact that in Darien, music is not viewed as an afterthought, but rather as an integral component of a well-rounded education. The department fosters a nurturing environment that encourages creativity with the aim of instilling a lifelong love of music. We have always had a dedicated music administrator and music-specific professional development to help music teachers continuously grow and flourish as educators. Ours is not a music program that is available just anywhere in Connecticut, and our current music staff is like no other. I know that you have all been provided with substantial evidence of why the arts are so important today and at past meetings from teachers, parents, and students. This evidence is unquestionable, and this proposed budget is absolutely not what is in the best interest for the students in Darien and their growth as young musicians. The superintendent has stated that our current music programming will not be affected by these cuts, but I don't see how that is possible given the scheduling data that has been presented to the administration. The proposed changes would bring about a very noticeable downgrade in what the music department currently offers to students. While nominally, the level of offerings are not being reduced, as the chair mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, heavy cuts to the music staff would likely no longer allow the teachers to meet the high expectations set by the Darien community. I understand that fiscal responsibility is a huge concern in this town and in this year's budget, but I am urging you to consider the children in our community and how these proposed cuts would impact them if they went through. The children in Darien deserve a quality music education, and the only way we can give them that is to keep our music department fully staffed with quality educators who go above and beyond every day to help them succeed. Thank you so much for your time and consideration.
Thank you.
Jonathan Ford, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jonathan Ford. I'm at 23 Edgewood Road and the parent of a child at Royal. I support many of the comments and concerns made by my fellow parents. The cut in the budgets all seem to have significant student-facing impacts, which is alarming as a new parent to the community. Students need support in a safe environment, and that comes from having teachers that have help in their classrooms and children having access to specials and programs like the arts so that everyone has a chance to succeed. Most of us moved to this here because of the schools, and we've been so happy with our experience so far. We cannot afford to jeopardize that. The schools are what contribute to the value of our homes and our unique community and the great town we all live in. I think if we can't find non-student facing synergies, we should challenge the assumption that adjusting our request to the Board of Finance is fiscally irresponsible. I think it'd be much more fiscally irresponsible not to maintain the quality of our amazing education system and protect the futures of our children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy McEvoy, you are unmuted and recognized.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tracy McEvoy, 5 Pondfield Lane, and president of the Wave Strong Foundation. I have a 2020 DHS graduate, a 9th grade daughter, and Matthew McEvoy, the Darien High School junior who died by suicide 22 months ago on March 31st of 2022. I'm speaking in opposition of the omission of the budget line items concerning the positions of the Director of Mental Health and the Wellness Center Coordinator at Darien High. It's been 670 days since Matthew's death, and I reflect every day of our loss and carry the infinite weight of his absence. In those last 16 weeks of Matthew's life, when he openly expressed he needed help, there was no wellness center at DHS and no mental health director. Our family did not have the knowledge or the support from the high school or his overburdened therapist to seek the right type of help he needed. And Matthew lost his battle. The entire mental health system failed Matthew and our family. Just 16 weeks ago, on October 30th of 2023, Ridgefield High School lost a 15-year-old student to suicide. I know that our administration reached out immediately with support and advice on how they should handle that situation. Advice given after learning from the pain our community felt after Matthew died. This is an example of the action of what's becoming the core of Darien, knowing we are stronger together. Without Dr. Dad's position in place, there's a high chance the administration would have remained silent and let the Ridgefield community grieve on their own. as they initially did when Matthew died. In her short tenure, Dr. Dad has made herself tangible to the Darien community with her empathy and expertise. She's an invaluable resource that will continue to benefit hundreds of families in our town. She, along with Dr. McCarthy, made our family feel like we were finally heard a year and a half after Matthew's passing. Judy Phillips in the Wellness Center at the high school has also made a positive impact on our students by honoring their value as a member of the DHS community, no matter how big or small their emotions are. Her gift is letting them know they are being seen and being heard. As Shannon Day mentioned, Darien has proudly caught the attention of the National Office of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. The 2022 DHS Campus Walk was recognized as the largest campus walk in both participation and fundraising in the country at their annual meeting just 2 weeks ago. Other communities throughout the country are asking their staff how we do it, and the answer is simple. We recognize we are stronger together, and that includes the presence of salaried mental health leaders who are committed to our students in our public school system. Please consider taking the positions of the Director of Mental Health and the Wellness Center Coordinator at Darien High, and always remember, we are stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no more raised hands.
Okay, thank you all for being here this evening. We appreciate your engagement, as I said before, and of course, your care and concern for our schools and our students. There's quite a lot to contemplate and to process this evening. With that, I will move to further review of the 24-25 superintendent's proposed budget and further discussion on fiscal year 25 proposed budget modifications under consideration. As noted, the first thing we'll do is talk in more detail about the middle school model and what's being proposed, and then we'll go on to review the budget modification list. If you are interested in staying for the duration of the meeting, please do. But if you are wanting to go home, now is a good time to do so. Thank you all. No, it's not approved. You. I think it's fine. Sure, that's fine. That's fine.
So, yeah.
Okay, Alan, do you want to get started?
Yes, thank you. Thank you again to members of the community, our parents, staff members, public officials, and to our students who participated this evening. I'll just reiterate that this budget, again, through efficiencies, enrollment, administrative restructuring, builds the capacity to deliver instruction and curriculum interventions for students and support the mental health supports for our students, and also addresses the retention of the staff at the percentage that we brought it in at. I'd like to take a moment or two just to address a couple of the correspondences to the board that I included for tonight's package. And again, just in deference to comments that were made this evening and so on. One of my memorandums talks about clarification about add and cuts. I'll talk quickly to it, but no less passionately, but just being respectful of comments that were made this evening. But the first one I'd like to just talk about is the proposed reductions to the superintendent's budget that I've sent to the board. The three topics addressed, which are paraprofessional contracts, the consultants, and the ELP. I think the board is aware of all of those. We've addressed all of those, and we're suggesting that we should realize those efficiencies and that should be taken into account. I won't comment on those. I'll pause there for a minute. Those, if they're okay, I'll just move on. I think we've talked about those three items.
And just to be clear, you shaded them in green, Rich, on the spreadsheet, basically.
Okay.
And so we were asked at Super Saturday and then the recent budget meeting, can you look at anything about transportation? I know we don't have a bus depot and so on and so forth. So we got to work and Rich did a bit of magic and we came up with this proposal. There are limitations to the proposal, but essentially we looked at what happens if we would just take ownership of our special services transportation and limit it to those number of vehicles. It would mean that we would probably have to purchase 9 new vehicles. We have 6 already out here. We would need a place to park them. We would probably need to go to P&Z. We would need an appropriation very, very quickly. I don't know if this is going to be a possible or even a realistic outcome, but if you're looking at ways to realize efficiencies in the first year, with capital, it's a $65,000 saving. Without the capital, it's $1.3 million saving to the budget. And as you look out, you can see over time, both capital, with including capital and including operating, there's a pretty significant amount of savings. You'll have to consider things like parking vehicles, some of our vehicles over at somewhere like Tokenique, in the actual car park itself. It's probably the only one that realistically could hold some of the buses. So I'll pause on, well, actually, I'll just address the 2 suggestions. Special education paraprofessionals, given the new contract that was realized in the new salary schedule, we're suggesting that the contract services, which already has 4 additional special education paraprofessionals built into that, we actually pull them out and hire them as paraprofessionals because now we can do it at a cheaper rate. And so you can see they're at just over $100,000 savings for the first year, and you can see how it plays out. Those are the 2 suggestions upon consideration from the last meeting that we'll bring before the board. I'll pause there.
So can you let's pop back to the special education transportation, just to clarify. This certainly is financially attractive, but in terms of the timeline, you'd need capital funding by March of this year, and you'd need a planning and zoning permit. So in terms of whether or not we can realize it, it's really more informational. You were asked to take a look, but.
Yes, that's tight at best, and maybe not even possible, but we took a look at it because we were asked to take a look at it.
Okay. So something we probably would have to check with some of our partners with, but it certainly looks tight at best. Okay, and then on the special education paraprofessionals, well, I guess let's stop there. Are there any questions on that proposal? John?
I just have a process question, Rich. If we were to pursue that in an expedited manner, maybe not for this budget cycle, how would we do that financially? I mean, we wouldn't budget for it, correct? But we could realize efficiency sooner than the fiscal year 26 budget in a way. So maybe just walk us through that process.
So the concern with pushing it out is we are working on actually having a contract with first student that is a 5-year contract. So the time to do it would be this year as opposed to future years. Well, March is ideal. It could be pushed into April. I mean, the concern with getting the buses is it's not like going to a car dealership and picking up the bus off the lot. It takes a while for them to be made, get delivered, then you have to letter them. So if we wanted them for the start of ESY, we would really need the money by like that first week of April in order to issue a purchase order. If we were foregoing doing this with ESY and just shooting for the start of the school year, so August, that buys us probably another month in time frame, and then we'd have to work with an outside contractor to service ESY.
It's still tight.
It's still tight.
Very tight. Sorry. Sorry, sir.
Oh,
I can't speak.
all right. So Rich, can you please walk
Michelle,
through the model?
could you pull up the savings, please?
So
Keep going, Michelle.
So right now, the budget calls for.
Keep going, Michelle.
It's in the packet too, guys. Just
Do you want me to go through it or?
Yes, please go through it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So right now, the budget calls for just over $1.3 million of transportation costs for special education. Those include 5 type 2 buses. So those are the mid buses you see in town. It calls for 1 wheelchair van because we're asking within the capital budget for another wheelchair van. And then we have a couple of routes that are out of district that are done through a contractor. So here would be a recommendation to hire 5, bring in 5 type 2 vehicles to replace the ones we're contracting out. So then obviously you would need 5 drivers, and those type 2 buses currently have bus monitors on them. So you'd need 5 part-time bus monitors to replicate the services. The second would be to get a second wheelchair van. So the capital budget calls for 1. This would be to get 2 to replace what we currently contract out. And again, you would need another driver and then a bus monitor for that as well. And then an 8th Suburban. So the budget right now calls for a 7th Suburban. This would be an 8th Suburban. However, this Suburban would also need a bus monitor because that route does include a bus monitor for this year. Given the impact and the amount of work associated with this, we would need a transportation assistant to go along with the transportation director. And then add in the cost of the fuel, because now there are buses. We have to pay for the fuel, the insurance, the maintenance on the buses, the training for the drivers, the training for the aides. The total cost would be about $670,000. So a savings on the operating budget of $634,000. And again, that's assuming that we do ESY going forward. If we can't do ESY is about a $230,000 expense. The vehicles itself would cost about $700,000. So $550,000 for the type 2 vehicles, $88,000 for the extra wheelchair van, and $62,000 for that extra Suburban. Including the 2 that are already in the capital budget, if you bundled them together, that would be $850,000. So the first year, you'd have an operating reduction of that 1.3 million. You'd spend 670 in operating. You'd have to have that $700,000 capital infusion. So the savings start to matriculate between both operating and capital in year 2. You have about a $700,000 savings, then it grows to about 770,000. So about 1.4 million over 3 years.
Go ahead, John.
Just to, again, very tight schedule. Is there any way to negotiate the bus contract in which would give us flexibility around this proposal instead of locking us up for the next 5 years?
So all bus contracts in Connecticut are 5 years. So we don't have the option of going to, let's say, a 1 year or 2 year agreement. Whether we do this or not, we're still going to have first student because you still need first student to do the home to school buses. It's a matter of taking away just the special education transportation.
So you can't negotiate with the special education buses.
So right now,
separate from
the contract that we've proposed, and that's going back and forth, gives us the right to essentially look for alternatives, just as we do now with the Suburbans. The question is going to be whether or not letting them know and giving them notice that we're not going to need them at all going forward for special education. Now, I'm given a driver shortage. I'm pretty sure they can redeploy those drivers to Stanford or Westport or wherever drivers are in need, but we do have to give them a certain amount of notice to let them know.
Okay, Greg, then Robin.
Are the costs that you've got here, is that the gross cost, or have you thought about financing the vehicles to bring down that year 1 cost?
So we don't finance anything. That would be a determination for the Board of Finance and the RTM. So these are just straight purchases.
Okay.
Robin, then Dennis.
Just about the driver shortage. If we have to hire 8 drivers, I mean, is that something that we think is feasible given the shortage?
So right now we have 6 drivers in-house, and we had a surplus of applications to fill those 6, and so we've actually turned drivers away.
Dennis.
Going back to John's point about the contract, is there a way we can do, I don't even know what the words are, a pro rata kind of approach, and we have someone come in for September, October and just pay a flat fee for a month to do this type of work, and then if we have to push the orders back and order doesn't come in until September 15th.
They're likely not going to agree to that because they're going to have that trainer when they're relocated, let's say to a Stanford or a Westport, retrained and recertified and go through all that. The ability to have them do ESY and then have that cutoff, that gap for those couple of weeks that happens between the school years, a lot more feasible, but to go in through September, October, November, let's say, and then switch would be a difficult sell.
Rich, 2 questions for you. One is, would we potentially see an increase in the bus contract because we're no longer contracting out this portion of services? And secondly, is there a quality difference in what our students experience in our own vehicles versus, and I mean nothing about for student, I'm just curious about the impact on the student experience.
So the cost of the buses for the daily rates are already set. They submitted a bid for those home to school prices and those bids are still locked in. So there wouldn't be necessarily an increase on that component. That would be the same. The buses that we would purchase would be the same buses that for student purchases. There's some from the same, vendor that sells the bus. They would look exactly the same. They'd still say Darien Public Schools. The only difference would, it would say for student on it. Rather than, if there's an issue with the bus, they do typically call the district first, and then we have to talk to the dispatcher and the location manager and get information from their drivers. You're essentially cutting out that middle person. The feedback about at least the Suburbans that we have has been very positive from those who have, who utilize that. So we'd expect the same type of transition.
Okay. Did I see you? Okay.
So I was just
John
gonna.
and Dennis.
Oh, Judy, oh, sorry about that.
First off, I apologize. Thank you for all the work you've done. This is fantastic work. Gives us a lot to think about. Just a pragmatic kind of point. I have no idea what a class 2 bus is and will they fit in a parking lot? Will it be difficult to get planning and zoning approval with that kind of thing? Or are they, regular size buses, mini buses?
So a type 2 bus is a 30 passenger bus. If you think of those home to school buses, the large buses that you see, essentially cut them in half, right? A little bit more, but cut them in half, and that's about the size. They are a little bit bigger than the standard parking spot. So you would think if you had 5 parking spots for 5 vehicles, you're probably going to take up about 7 spots. So for those vehicles, we looked at an area in the Tokenique school that abuts the open field where nobody parks. Those would be probably the designated spot, most likely available. The other schools simply don't really have a lot of available parking. HHR is going under construction. Oxford has no spots whatsoever. The high school doesn't really have any available spots. Middle school might have a little bit, but really probably Tokenique would be the best. The Suburbans currently park here at central office, and the expectation would be the 2 extra Suburbans and the wheelchair vans would be parked in central office as well.
John.
So I was just going to say, we have 2 weeks to figure out if it's remotely feasible, and we're not going to figure it out tonight, but maybe we can expedite some discussions with the, with the town side and work from there.
Okay, I'm happy to take that as a working order takeaway. Sarah, did you have a
That was
question
just what
before?
I said I would appreciate if you would reach out to the Board of
Yep.
Finance and RTM and P&Z and see if this is even potentially feasible.
Okay, will do. I'm on it. Okay, on the paraprofessionals. So back to any questions on that, on what Alan is modeling. Yes, Katie.
Can we just get a little more color about why these 4 special education paraprofessionals were originally put in the consultants versus as an FTE?
Originally, the short story was it was more expensive. And with the current contract, the old contract that we had.
So go ahead, Shirley, if you want to add to that.
We had originally put in the budget book that we were requesting. We had 9 FTEs that we were looking at. The idea when we went back and visited, given the new para contract, what it changed was in terms of we can train our own RBTs. The hourly rate that's coming in on the new para contract is less than it was on those that are already grandfathered in. So looking at the rate of hourly rate plus benefits would make it affordable for us to look for our own people. Plus, we'd rather train our own people because it would give us better opportunity for our own supervision.
So to that, I would just say that I think it would be helpful for the board going forward. It would be helpful for us to know what staffing is put under consultants that also might be under an FTE. When you have the same person doing the same job and you put them in 2 buckets, it can make it complicated and difficult to see a full picture. I think especially, as we've heard this board saying for years that we're trying to understand and support the needs of special education, and that we want to make sure that you have what you need. And especially in the past year, as we have seen, surprises coming up once the school year is started, I think that would just help a lot for clarity. The other thing that I would say is that as a matter of principle, I would also hope that it could be brought to this board as well, that full number that we need, and then possibly have a decision about what the budgetary implications are, because I do understand that consultants don't report to our building administrator, right? They don't have the same standards and protocols that they have to follow in terms of missing services, missing days, all of those things. We talk a lot about how special our Darien staff are, and I wouldn't think that this would be any exception. So I would just like to encourage a more complete conversation for us to understand that picture and be able to make those choices.
Can you help me understand what the question is? I'm not totally sure I understand. I think the
Yeah.
first piece of it is that you want to understand in the consulting line items, how many FTE equivalents there are. Is that the first piece you're asking for?
So kind of what I really want to understand is, what do we need to staff our schools? So for example, if we need 13 special education paraprofessionals, then I want to know that, as opposed to saying we're adding 9 and then 4 have been put over in this bucket. Like, I want to see one comprehensive, bullet point on those staffing. It's confusing when they're allocated in different places. It's not a complete picture.
Okay, thank you. Is that the entirety of your question? There was a second piece, and I
Yes,
I
so
did
the
not
se-
understand
So
that
the
either.
second piece was about the philosophy of saving money on consultants when it seems that it's a diminished return.
Robin.
This might be a little bit related. I was under the impression that when we were hiring special ed consultants, it was usually because they were a specialized kind of thing that we were not able to provide in-house. So I kind of, along similar lines, I think it would be really helpful to understand if there are, to Katie's point, people that have been put in the consultant bracket that we actually could potentially do in-house, because I think that could also drive a conversation, maybe longer term, of some areas where we might be able to do things more cost effectively if we made a decision to do certain types of things, like you're saying with RBTs. And I don't know enough about it, but I think that would be a very helpful breakdown for future conversations about this.
Okay. Because we have multiple reasons why we choose not to, right? Sometimes it's the ability to train in-house. Sometimes it's the cost of training. Sometimes it's versus the cost
Availability
of
of staff.
consulting, availability of staff. So if we're asking for that, it would be helpful to qualify why we make those choices. Is that something you want to review right now?
No.
Okay.
I thought that the consulting was because it was so specialized that we couldn't provide it in-house. So this was different information that I guess I'm just processing now.
Yeah. So I think, for example, OTs would be an example. Can you explain that, Shirley?
I think the best way to explain is both things can be true. So often there are specialized staff that we had with our RBTs that we don't have available or training. So yes, we do contract. The contracting change that make it feasible that we can also train our own and come in at a competitive rate as well, based on staffing. We did analysis of OTs, which are all contracted. So we do contract them because it is more fiscally responsible to contract than to have our own. And you need them in multiple buildings. So we have about 7 that we contract.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions on the paraprofessional proposal? That'll be something for us to decide. It is a different price point, but it is more FTEs. Yes, Katie.
Are there any left in the consultant bucket? Did we move them all over? So how many are left?
I'll get the number of how many are left.
That's what I mean about how we don't know.
So I will say, assuming this 4 is approved, there would be 1 left for paras. So if these 4 are approved, along with the 9 that were requested already, just for paras, there'd be 1 left in the consult line. But there are other items in the consult line.
Would it be possible, or I guess I should say, would it be difficult to see the number for moving the full 5 over?
Okay. Someone's on the left, Julie.
Thank you. And
Can I just
maybe
clarify there, which 5 are you talking about?
The Paris.
Well, hold on. Rich,
I don't think
we're trying to figure out who we're talking about now, which FTEs, not people.
For the consultants or?
Somebody just
The
said there's
5.
5.
So five contracted paras currently are in the budget. So if the 4 here are approved, there'd be one more contracted para left in the consult line. There are other things in the consult line besides paras though.
Is that what you mean, Katie? Just trying to. Oh, the 5. Okay.
Julie.
this might be an easy one, but Rich, why is 1 remaining in the?
So it's specific to the specific student.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, I will speak briefly to the BOE ad cut list memorandum that went out. I just think it's important to know context and
You wanna do
clarification.
that or the middle school first?
I'll just do this real
Okay.
quick and then we'll
All right.
move to middle school. So most, if not all of these, I'm not supportive of, but that being said, I just want to recognize the context for these. The recommendation to reduce the wellness center by a third would mean that the wellness center would only be open 3 days per week. If the intention was to close it, the grant funds, we would have to return to the state. Dr. Dad's position, I would say, has been spoken to here this evening. The consultancy and RC1 would also eliminate team talk at the high school. That's another resource that has been spoken about for mental health. The professional development would be reducing things like the NIAS visit in the fall because that's which is accreditation requirement, restorative practices training.
I think it'll be more efficient to go through this when we go back through the line by line, just because then we can cross-reference it to what you're talking
All right,
about.
well, I just want to make sure that people understand.
Where
what
your
we're
position. So
talking
as we get to the lines, why don't you fill us in from where you are in the memo? And then that way, and then board members can comment or not from there. Okay. Thank you.
With that, I'd just like invited Dr. Dahlstrom this evening, just from the middle school, because there's been discussion about middle school from team to reductions to safety. I did say early on in the process, and I've actually flagged it a little bit for the past year, the middle school was going to be one of the focuses for this budget. And it has been and is from the superintendent's proposed budget. But I would like Carolyn just to speak to some of the issues as to her perspective on them. I think it's important from a leadership point of view. You've heard what we've had to say, and I would like Carolyn to take a couple of minutes just to update the board on some of these things that are in the budget.
Sure. I only have a 20-minute presentation. I promise it'll be quick. I just wanted to talk a couple minutes about the specific items that were in the Middlesex budget and were brought up at some of the past board meetings. So to start, we talked about instructional leadership, climate, and culture, and that really kind of looks at the leadership team. Currently, we have a leadership team comprised of 1 principal and 2 assistant principals, where each administrator oversees the day-to-day operations of the grade level. Hiring an additional assistant principal will positively impact student outcomes and the teaching and learning. While I recognize this is a challenging time for this request, to put it in perspective, a 3rd assistant principal was added to the high school leadership team around 2005, when the student population was the size that middle school currently is. Both schools have grown since then. An assistant principal is a very forward-facing job. An additional administrator will allow additional time to interact directly with the staff, the students, and the families. The benefit of an additional assistant principal at each grade level will provide increased instructional support to teachers and students, pertaining specifically to the professional learning, instructional strategies within the classroom that support students, student outcomes, and responding to student needs, as we have heard over and over tonight, that have become more complex and increased in number. The administrative restructuring also has the additional assistant principal and a special education 12-month program director. This would also allow for more focus on those important transitions in the short amount of time we have at middle school, looking from 5th to 6th grade and 8th to 9th grade. We will have a dedicated administrator at each grade level and a dedicated program director for special education who will know the specific students and the specific needs for each transition, which will only increase student engagement. In terms of responding to the needs of all students, this budget also looks at the flexibility of allowing teachers with an open 5th period class to support students through a tier 1 intervention model. This will allow the knowledge and expertise of the building to be utilized in a way that further benefits student learning and student outcomes. By allotting time for teachers to work with students who are struggling or need extra support in their content area, it will result in a more engaged environment. I also want to kind of address the team model. We have really been looking at the proposed budget, and I want to kind of say that the proposal will maintain the team model and should not increase rainbow classes for students. Again, I would like to provide a social emotional update on supports that we plan to integrate into the building, even though we do not have a specific request in the budget. It is worth noting that this was an important part of the discussion with Central Services. Currently, Dr. Adley and Dr. Dad are working with a community partner to hopefully secure a teen talk counselor at Middlesex. We feel a teen talk counselor will benefit students by offering uninterrupted availability over school breaks, summer vacations, and after school hours. We have seen an increased demand for more and more complex needs of students, especially post-pandemic, and a teen talk counselor allows us to offer another layer of support for students and families. Finally, we will continue to ensure safety and security is at the forefront. We have an SRO who is dedicated to Middlesex every day, and at times an SSO who is available to us as well. It is important to remember that Middlesex is a closed campus, which is easier to maintain than a high school open campus. The goals and priorities presented to you this evening on behalf of Middlesex are designed to increase student outcomes, build the teacher capacity, and effectively utilize building leadership to continue to facilitate a climate of high expectations and support for students. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Does anyone have questions for Carolyn? Or I see also Caitlin O'Keefe and Dr. Bellows here, and I see Ellen back there too, in case anybody wants to ask about her impression of it. Any questions from the board?
I have a question. Sarah.
Yes, Sarah.
So talk to me like I'm a middle schooler. I don't understand how a reduction of teachers, and I know it's enrollment based, how does that not increase rainbow students?
So you have to get creative, to be honest. We've looked at various models of the team, and one of those could be, which is not ideal, but a split team, which would work for the teachers. So the teachers would teach potentially 3 sections of 8th grade and 2 sections of 7th grade and be a team. They would still have the kids that go on that team. So they'd be a red team. So there'd be a red 7 and a red 8. So they wouldn't be necessarily traveling off team. The students wouldn't be rainbow. And that team of teachers would still have a team meeting time. They would just be discussing their 5 classes, which are across grade levels. Does that make sense?
That's an idea that we haven't, this is my issue with this conversation, is that every time we talk about it, there's something new and some new iteration, and it's confusing.
The team model we want to keep intact because we recognize the need for that, especially as middle school educators and administrators. We believe in the team model. There are various ways that you can keep that team model of, potentially cutting a team, making a grade level team. There are ways to do that and maintain the team model without making more rainbow classes for students, so that they still have that team feeling.
Julie, then Katie.
Thank you. Thanks, Carolyn. Isn't the idea of a team that they're all in the same grade, though? Aren't we starting to talk about houses if you're talking about different grades on the same team? It's horizontal versus vertical generally?
Yeah, so they would still have 4 teams in each grade. It would just be the teachers that would be teaching like 2 7th grade English classes and 3 8th grade English classes. So the kids would still be on their grade level horizontal teams.
The teachers.
The teachers would be the ones that might be.
So the teachers are rainbow, not the kids.
Correct.
Okay, so then we still have the challenge of the teachers having team meetings with the team of teachers.
Because it would be this
multiple teams.
No, but it would be the same team. So the English, the math, the science, and the social studies teacher all would have 2 7th grade classes and 3 8th grade classes and a dedicated team time.
Okay.
I know it's.
I've said a bunch of times visuals would be really helpful here, guys.
Yes.
Okay, Katie.
So the only way that that works is not really having 4 teams across each grade. It's really having 3.5, right? Like if you have a set of 5 teachers that are teaching 2 in 7th grade and 3 in 8th grade, then that 7th grade red team is 2 class sizes. So that's, you know, it's 2/5 the size of the other one. So it makes it that much harder to get all of those kids, right? It makes their classrooms that much less diverse if you're trying to keep them all on the red team and their cohort has shrunk to less than half of every other team. So it's not exactly apples to apples. Like we can call it red and we can call it split, but that cohort won't get the same experience.
I think they would, because they'd still have a team. They'd still have their team teachers. They still travel with each other in the core classes.
So what's the size of the average team at the middle school?
Well, an average team with 5 classes is probably 90-ish students.
So what would the size of a split team be?
Probably 90-ish students, but it would be across grades.
So Carolyn, can you guys maybe map it out for us a little bit for the next board meeting, just so we can see what you're talking about? So we're not trying to do it in here.
Yes.
Please. Thank you. John.
Just a point of order. The transaction of business, one of our policies is that the board shall concern itself with questions of educational policy and not with administrative details of the district's operations. The fact we're getting so detailed and not listening to our administrators in terms of how this works, we're getting down into the nitty gritty, asking about the cross section. So I'm just, again, we got to stick to our policies, folks, and trust their guidance in terms of how they're going to pull it off, because other policies also talk about running our district efficiently.
Okay. Julie.
I just, again, would like to understand better how what we're talking about is still keeping in line with the design that we've had at our middle school for many years now and hasn't been discussed, and changing it all. I agree with following policies, but we can't follow them out the window. And I think that it's important that as a Board of Education, we understand how the school is going to function, even if we make the changes that are being proposed. I don't believe we're getting overly operational.
All right, so the follow-up on this is a better understanding of, and maybe if there's other models you're looking at, maybe, I don't know, just to help us understand what you're looking at, please.
I will say this, we're maintaining the integrity of the teams.
We have had, I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be argumentative, but we have had no discussion of what the integrity of the team means. That's what I'm craving. What are we protecting? What can we give up? How do we arrive at that decision in order to make all of this work? I think it's our responsibility to understand what the trade-offs are. And I'm hearing again and again, there aren't any trade-offs, but there are changes. So how does that not translate into trade-offs? And I'm just trying to understand.
Okay, so we're taking as a point of information for next time. Dennis, do you have an additional question?
Oh, not an additional question, but just a point of, to reemphasize what Mrs. Best is saying, is that the word shall and probably don't lend a lot of, confidence in, I think, the many of the board members. And I think that's where we need to see the actual proposal without getting too nitty gritty. But I think it's a large change. People are concerned, and just a little more clarity would help.
Okay, so we have that as an action item for next time. Thank you, Dennis.
I just have to say, though, that very respectfully, there's only so much more you're going to be able to bring to the table. The schedule will have to be worked out. That's why we went with the scheduling consultant. And at some level here, at some point, you're going to have to go and just trust that you can trust and verify and so on, fine. But at some level, you're going to have to go forward with and putting before you a proposal that will maintain the integrity of the team system. Right? We're not dismantling it. And at some point, you're going to have to either be ready to move forward or not ready to move forward. It'll come down to that. And actually, I'm asking you to come down to it. So at some point, you're going to have to trust the fact that I believe and I'm telling you we can do it. That principal's telling you we can do it. The consultant's telling you we can do it. Now you may say the staff aren't. I'm not being disrespectful to staff at all. But we can implement this and maintain what is in that middle school.
Okay.
Jill, can I just clarify the policy too? If you, 9110 also says 2A, to create, abolish, modify, and maintain such positions, schools, divisions, and classifications as may be necessary for the efficient administration of the educational enterprise. And I think those of us that are looking for more detail are making sure that these positions will create efficient administration of the educational piece of our district.
Okay. We have our takeaway. Any more questions on the middle school?
Jill, just
Yes.
one question, just on music, because the detail that we were given did not include anything about that. I just have a clarifying question.
On middle school music?
Middle school,
Yeah.
the 0.6, I think it is, cut. Is that just is that the general ed, like music appreciation teachers, or would that be a potential cut to band, orchestra, or chorus?
Can you answer that, Carolyn? Or Ellen or Marge?
It's a string teacher. Colleen Thompson said that she could eliminate a string teacher and still not have any diminution of services to children.
Okay. Yes, Greg.
Just a question. I know that, I guess at the last board meeting, someone caught the assistant principal at the middle school, the ad that was being added back. Can
Yeah.
you just talk about like the why now? Like the student level of population was a reason you gave, but my understanding is it's been going down over time, which is part of the reason why we're talking about the faculty. Can you just talk about that a little bit, please?
I think we have to look at the needs of the students post-pandemic especially, and being able to be visible and have more time in classrooms supporting teachers, instruction, and really making sure that we're supporting the student needs both academically and with the mental wellness. We've seen an increase in needs that require us to be reactive to a lot of what's happening in the building, and having another administrator will allow us to do so and to be proactive of anticipating and using trends and data to be able to further support not only the instruction in the classroom, but what our students need in the building. Looking at the whole child, having another administrator will help us have the time to do that. Do you guys want to add anything back there? APs?
I mean, can I ask another question of them? Like, what are you missing now that this new person will add?
Yes, who you're asking?
I
Who
mean,
you're
the three of
asking?
them, like.
The three of them. Carla, go ahead, or whoever wants to speak
Do
to
you want
that,
to
go
come up
ahead.
and speak, or do you want me to talk to that?
You understand the question? Carla, go ahead.
Like, what can't you do now?
So
that this-
if we had an additional assistant principal, I would add one per grade level that can really focus on the grade level needs, the transitions into middle school, the transitions out of middle school, and really work with, if you look at the whole thing, a 12-month program director to adequately plan for the needs of our students. It also gives a responsive nature to when students have anything that pops up that needs an administrative intervention, we'll be able to. Right now, there's 3 of us running the building, and we're trying to cover for each other and be visible in the classrooms as much as possible, and having another one will allow more time to do that. It increases our visibility, it increases our coaching with staff, it increases our forward facingness with students, getting to know them, getting to know their names, getting to know their needs. And so we would have a dedicated assistant principal per grade level to do that. It would honestly just give us more time to help kids.
Okay.
Just Jill, just one
Yes, Robin.
follow-up question on the PPT meetings, which I understood was close to 50% currently of the assistant principal time. So how, with the addition of one additional assistant principal, how would you envision that would be changing now?
Well, we'd be able to split them amongst another administrator. So we'd be able to look at having one per grade level, and then having me take some of the higher ones that might need the level of principal that's in there. I can look at certain students and programs that I can assist with. The program director will be taking other. You would now have 5 dedicated staff in the building that can look at 504s and PPTs versus the 4.5 we have now. Try to get that right. So it gives us the dedicated staff in the building to do that.
Okay, other questions on this?
I just want to say though, that the assistant principal is more than PPTs. There's a lot that goes into the day of working with students and working with staff and being responsive to families. The PPTs is only a piece of it.
Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. We will walk through then the ad cut list. Alan, if you want to, unless there's something else you want.
No, I just didn't know whether you wanted to reference the questions or
Okay,
you
sure.
want any clarification on those. We can just move through them quickly if you want. I won't really pause on them too much. Professional development. We've tried to address that. Generally speaking, there's a lot more professional development work.
I'm going to interrupt you and
Okay,
just
let's
say,
do
let's
that,
go to
yeah.
the ad
Let's-
cut list because all of this corresponds.
Okay,
to
as long as you-
different
okay,
RCs.
fine.
So whoever asked about professional development on the line item, if they have questions on how you answered it, they can pick up on that. Okay. Thank you, Alan, for bearing with me. All right. Okay, so any additional questions on the first thing on here is basically the administrative structure on the addition of assistant principals. Is there anything else anyone wants to know or add, subtract? Greg has.
I just have a broad question.
Yes, Greg.
When we were going, I think when Jim was going through like the broader budget, I think there was commentary around the combined Board of Ed proposed ad cuts was adding to the budget.
Yeah.
And I just misreading this because it looks like it's subtracting $922,000 in aggregate. Am I not reading that right or?
So
Duplicative things. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
So again, you have all ends there. That means every proposal relative to the superintendent's budget, except for the green line items, are rejected. Okay, the green line items are the administration's new proposals, which have impacted it by a net whatever number.
Those incremental adjustments that.
From the
that you
administration
guys have
only.
made. Okay.
Everything else you receive should have an N next to it. So it's as if everything was rejected. I don't want to speak to Mr. Palin's assumptions of what was added, what was subtracted, because there's no Ys next to it.
Right.
Okay, he might have gone down and done
Got
all
it.
Ys,
Okay,
who
all right.
knows, or the effect of, so.
I just wanted to make sure we had a basis for like broadly.
Yeah,
what
the
we're-
the
we're
basis
starting point is.
now is with the green, that would be a modified administrative proposed budget, okay?
Got it. Okay.
Right. Anything on the assistant principal, either at the high school or the middle school? Okay. Any additional information on the art coordinator change? Anything to explain, Alan, as I'm going, you hop in.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, you two, Marge and Rich, please. Okay, any on Robin's salary savings, any commentary, questions? Sorry, I didn't mean to call you up by name, Robin. On the contract support, eliminating the director of visual and performing arts, restore director of music. Do you want to comment on that one, Alan? Is that in the memo?
Well, just the way I will go through these, I mean, you forgive me for calibrating myself, because when we're talking about some of these assistant principals, if we want to eliminate I'm not for some of these, right? So clearly, I think you know my position on some of these, so some of them are passing over, but I'm not saying that I agree with the change from the board, so I just wanted to.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, to make it clear, these are board proposals.
Okay. The additional commentary on the ad of the elementary curriculum coordinator, questions, comments? Okay. Questions, comments on the, this is an unstructuring of the special education restructure side of the administrative equation. Any comments or questions? Yes, Katie.
I just wanted to comment that when I proposed this change, I wasn't necessarily suggesting that the 10-month employees at the middle school and the high school couldn't or shouldn't become 12-month. I think that got lumped into here. What I was really saying was that I was not for one position being K through 12. So I wanted to add back K through 5.
Okay. Do we need to make any changes then? Just to repeat, are there, Rich, go ahead.
So what's on the ad cut sheet is essentially to revert back to what you have now. So we can leave that and then insert another line item to potentially restore the elementary program director.
And then just keep, and then, so it would be retaining the K through 5, and then making, the change would be that the current department
Program.
chairs, yes, would, right.
All right. The add back of the world language, well, there's two things in there, right? You made it K through 12,
Sarah,
Sarah?
K through 12, yeah. I just anecdotally, I attended the incoming 9th grade orientation last night at the high school, which was very well done. But it was a panel of all the department chairs and the special education department chair and the assistant principals. And I just sat there thinking, if we don't have, you know, if there was just an AP in that spot, in the foreign language spot, I just think the message that it sends, it doesn't jive well with me. And you know that because I put this back on here, but I think this is devaluing world language. And we heard a lot that is a widely respected piece of our curriculum. And it was also interesting that during the world language presentation, the current department chair referred to it as K-12. And I don't know whether there was a lot of talk about the continuum K through 12. So I don't think she did that because I put it this way, but it feels like that's how the department is being thought of currently. And I'm just curious thoughts of if that's the way it's being run now or not. I mean, how much overlap is there between the K-5 language and the current department chair?
I would think that if it was put back in, it would be K-12.
Yeah.
But
And what advantages would there be to having a K-12 foreign language, or are there disadvantages to doing that way?
You're the world language teacher.
Naturally, the advantage would be having one consistent person that is informing the curriculum and the pacing of curriculum development at each level, elementary, middle, and high. It's not to say that that can't be done when the responsibilities are shared across grade levels, but there's one person with one message.
Yeah, okay. And I'll ask you guys the same question I asked the middle schoolers. What cannot be what would not happen if this role was not as it is now? Like if that work was spread amongst many different people, what do you think would fall through the cracks, and what would happen? And I know you're gonna say we can handle it, but
I think the biggest thing that would not happen in people's eyes or otherwise, right? The biggest thing, it's not impacting the students. I will maintain that. Particularly teachers having a world language person in your classroom who's in that discipline. But again, I say this respectfully: good teaching is good teaching. If you're looking at Chinese, you're not going to understand that. But teachers value in the discipline area the professional learning and the support that comes along with that. And so that would be a level of support that they would understandably feel that has been taken away from them.
The next one's an admin. We've eliminated the scheduling consultant. That's in here, embedded in here, as is the paraprofessional contract settlement. Okay, we've talked about the special ed paraprofessionals, and we've talked about transportation. We've talked about ELP tuition. We are now on the English department chair. Any comments or questions?
Can I comment on a question?
Yes,
or
of
no?
course.
I
course.
I honestly don't know where this comes from, in the sense of this was never on the discussion. I'm having a hard time enough putting some of these things on for discussion. I'm not sure where this one comes from and the relevancy of it. I just can't see that, like, under any circumstances that happening.
could we ask for more clarification from the member who put this up? Sure. Dave, can you elaborate why you feel like this is an important position to be on this list?
I think you could argue fairly broadly about the position generally. I think here, if you look at some of the performance in English, and that is the lines from K through 5 and then following on through the high school, I think that we have a real concern here, to the point that was just made, that if you have one strong person who's coordinating that effort versus if we have this centralized, and unfortunately that's not being done well, I think that's a real challenge. And so I think in the absence of having strong central guidance, then perhaps we need to think of another model.
Like, I just have to say here, we're talking about performance again.
Yeah. That's
Again,
very,
we just went through all of this. And then once again, we're talking about the performances on the table. I just like, I'm sure we can't be talking about the performance of people at the table here. I mean,
I
it's
think I
just
said the word
inappropriate.
performance at all. I said strong centralized guidance. I didn't use the word performance at all.
You were talking about scores.
I was? Oh, good to
Well,
know.
okay. I think there are two different kinds of performance. There's performance that has to do with scores and ways of measuring overall academic performance, which is what I understood you'd be referring to in this particular instance. And then there is performance of specific folks. I am in agreement with you that we cannot talk about the performance of specific folks, as I said from the beginning. So what we rest with is Dave, what you're basically saying is overall, you think a different model is in order.
That would be correct.
Okay. The next one is the wellness coordinator. Anything else on this one?
I think we spoke to it in the memorandum that it changes the days. If you don't spend the money in the grant, you'd have to return it. It's part of the wellness package, but.
Thank you.
Can I just ask on that front, how much is left in the grant? Is it for the full fiscal?
So it's 2/3 of the individual, and then every year it's going to go down a third. So this is the first year you'll have a third hit the operating budget. And then if it stays, the following year, it'll be 2/3 in the operating budget, 1/3 in the grant. And then the third year, it'd have to be 100%.
So hypothetically, there could be a third 0.3333 FTE cut and not impact the grant on this line item.
So it would just mean keeping the wellness center open 3 days out of the 5 days a week.
But you could do it without impacting the grant at point.
Yeah, you would just, as long as that person stayed or you found a replacement person, yeah, you could just keep it open then.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, the elimination of Teen Talk. Any additional commentary?
I would just throw in some anecdotal. I'm the board liaison to Thriving Youth Task Force, and my first meeting this year, the Teen Talk counselor was there, and she mentioned that it has been very, very well received, and that many students are utilizing it, particularly students of color, which I found interesting. That's the person in the building that they are gravitating towards. So totally anecdotal, but.
Okay.
Did we know what we're cutting here? I'm not sure if we knew what we were cutting here, and if so, like, why are we cutting it?
What do you mean by that question, Alan?
So it's Teen Talk as a mental health resource that we provided, that we discussed last year in the budget. So we're talking about cutting it, but I didn't know if board member understood what we were cutting, and if it is, like, why we just suggesting to cut it.
Okay, is there a reason you're suggesting to cut it?
It's not following the line of questioning here this evening.
Okay. Would you like to provide any additional color on? Go ahead, John.
I'm not going to answer for Dave, but Alan, we are dealing with a very large budget increase, 83% more than last year. So in some ways, some of us are trying to prioritize certain elements of this proposed budget. And so I don't think it's, as much as I disagree with some elements of this, I think we should have the latitude to ask or request or propose certain line items to reduce the budget. And in my sense, I had a couple items. It was to prioritize where I thought things were most important.
And I would just follow up to comment that I think that there's been a lot of discussion about mental health this evening. And I think that's one of the most important things we do as a district, and that we do it and we do it right. I'm not sure that that's the case. So maybe that's a performance thing, and I'm not allowed to question that. We just throw FTEs willy-nilly and everything gets fixed. I disagree with that approach. And so some of these cuts reflect that, because I don't think we can just take this haphazard, take chance, not do things that are effective, have admin come here and misrepresent what's going on in these programs that are not actually serving the purposes that they're designed to serve. So I will push back, and I will challenge those, and I will challenge you to get those correct.
Dave, would you like some more information on Teen Talk?
Sure.
Okay. Alan, can you guys take as a next step some efficacy data on Teen Talk so that
That's
the
fine.
board
I'll
can
just make a
understand it
point
better?
to it if I may. You asked me to bring up in this memorandum anything that was in here aligned to it, and this is aligned to it. So, but I respect what people are saying, and I'll go with the flow.
Yep.
And we'll see where it takes us.
Yep. I mean, I'll be clear. I appreciate the point on making sure that things are done well, but I do believe that mental health is absolutely a board priority. I'm more than happy to do the work to do it better, but I won't be cutting anything in the budget this year on mental health.
Jill?
Yes.
Just one thing, when we get the mental health updates, which I believe are on the agenda quarterly at least.
Yeah.
It would be helpful at least even this spring to have an update on not only what Dr. Dowd is doing, but also Team Talk, all of the efficacy data, the Wellness Center.
Yeah.
So that everyone can get an update on how these programs are working, because it is very new. And I think there are still questions about that.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. Professional library purchase. That's $350. Professional development, eliminate the NEASC visit and staff PD. Do you have a comment on that, Alan?
I'll just point to just for simplicity, the point 3 on the memorandum. It's reducing restorative justice practices, literacy, numeracy, SEL, play-based learning, UDL, and AP training.
Yes, Katie.
So this potentially a two-pronged question. The first I would ask to Dave, when I was reading through this packet, it seemed to me that the answers from administration got specific in a way that I don't remember board members delineating at the table. So in this instance, then I want to ask Mr. Brown if when you were eliminating the professional development, were you being specific to the NEASC visit or?
No, it wasn't. It was really, again, just with a tough budget year in that particular category, looking at a situation where we do have a number of requirements that have been sort of foisted upon the teachers, and that seems to be increasing year over year. Some comes from the state, some comes from the admin. And so I think by putting everything on the table, that sort of forces the question, exit, if you will. It makes us really have to do a deep dive and look through that and what's necessary, what must we have, what mustn't we have. Can we take a pause on something for the year? And really, to do that, unfortunately, as we all know, an ad cut, sometimes there's policy questions that wind up in here and it gets conflated. Sometimes people are sending signals or trying to attract attention to things and public doesn't understand because we don't have this opportunity to comment. So it's an imperfect process. That may be one where it was unclear, but I really think this involves taking a step. Do we really have to do all this year? Yeah, because it's this rule. Yeah, because it's that rule. And maybe taking it back. And I think as we're going to perhaps be cutting back on teachers or have that tough challenge, what can we do to free them up and free those resources to better do their frontline job?
Thank you. I appreciate that. So then just to follow up, I would say that I'm not exactly sure how to phrase this, but I was a bit uncomfortable when I was reading some of the specifics that admin put into the answers about what would be cut. And I think coming back to John's point, this board does have line item veto. So it's not just about, if a board member even proposed, say, a 10% cut, like it might not be the specific programs that were put in there. So I just want a word of caution on saying what would be cut if that was not the words out of the board member.
The only thing that I would add to that, Katie, is that we have line item veto in terms of the number, but beneath that, if Alan chooses the NEASC visit as what he wants to put up, he does have latitude over that. So we don't have the ability to say, I want it to be the NEASC visit, or I don't want it to be the NEASC visit. We're just approving the number, just for clarification.
Okay, we'll leave that for another day.
Go ahead. And then Greg, yep.
In lines to that discretion you just referenced, that's within budget categories, not broadly.
Within project, but yes, correct. Thank you. Yes, Greg.
I was just going to ask a follow-up to this conversation. Is it possible to get a breakdown, not just for this professional development category, but each of them in terms of what is required? Because I know that when I did the follow-up
Yes.
reading,
It's in here.
there's certain requirements versus not.
It's part of the questions.
Was it
Greg-
broken
Greg?
out across all of the different, like for all professional development across everything, or?
I see 19.
Yeah.
let's see.
Well, I think the question was, what was the professional development required by the state? So,
Right, so I read through that.
Yeah.
And it talks about like minimum number of hours and things like
Yes.
that. I don't know how to translate that back into the budget line items.
Amy, do you want to talk about that or?
Well, I would just add that we also provided information from recommended legislative update from the I should say CABE, the CABE list of required trainings. That was one. I'm sorry, the second piece was the most recent legislative update from 2023 that has specific trainings. So in addition to that, we looked at RC 19, which most of those are in that category. And we listed there what was required and what is not.
Does that help, Greg, or do you need more information?
I'll take another look at it and I can follow up.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. We've got a couple different PD categories. Anything else on those? Clubs and councils, anything to add, Alan?
Well, we did list all the clubs and council that we were talking about, so we didn't want to make we attached a list to the Excel spreadsheet. It was on one of the tabs.
So just to clarify, this is the stipend, like so what does this 20%
Rich
mean?
So the only thing in clubs and councils for the district are the stipends. Everything else is either fundraised or things like that. So if you're going to do a 20% reduction to the high school clubs and councils, you're cutting a club stipend.
Right, so you can't contractually, the stipend is the stipend, so we can't
So you have
cut
to cut the
20%
club.
of this, so we are cutting,
You
if
have
you're
to cut
cutting 20%
specific
of clubs
clubs.
and councils, you're cutting 20% of the current clubs and councils at DHS.
You have to cut specific clubs.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on clubs and councils? Yes, Dave.
And again, this purposes of exercise of 20% generally was not a disdain for disc golf or anything particular. It was really just taking a look. What is the attendance? What's the attrition rate? Who's in it by the end of the year? What's the participation? Do we have other ways of doing it? Perhaps less clubs that are poorly attended, or perhaps things where people don't last for the year. We have part of that answered with the listing of the clubs that exist, but some of that other information was not forthcoming. So this is an exercise to try and gather that information, perhaps see if that 20% number is actually a good number or not a good number, and have that information, make an informed decision. Also, maybe a challenge to the staff. Can we do a little more with less this year, given the tough budget situation?
Okay. So is there more information that can be gathered about the clubs and whether we have any that are?
So we gave attendance. They don't check attendance every week. They get updates from the people who are running the clubs and councils on what the attendance is. And if it drops off, then they don't run the club the next year. But I can see if they've done a check-in.
Okay. Robin?
Just so looking at this list, so you have on here the math modeling club, math team. It's my understanding that for members of, say, like the Math Honor Society, they are required to do certain things, including math modeling club or math tutoring or things like that, that are part of their community service hours. And so if you were going to take away those, then I think it kind of reduces the effectiveness and the intent of the Mu Alpha Theta Math Honor Society as an example. And I think National Honor Society might have some things in here as well. I'm not sure.
Okay, so is there, does the board, is there a question that we want information on, meaning that I take your point?
I
Are there
just think
certain
if this
clubs
kind
that-
of a list is going to be put together, there needs to be a little bit of thought into which clubs we're saying we would actually cut, because I think this would actually end up disrupting some of the student and academic kinds of clubs that we have. That it just a comment when I looked at the initial
Okay.
list.
So the follow-up question is probably we need to see what the recommendation is over and above the actual list. Okay. Yes, Dave.
No, if that wasn't a question, I'd pose that question in addition to what I was trying to get.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. On to teachers. We're restoring some teachers. Any commentary on that? Okay. Music teachers on there, Julie. Any commentary?
Well, sorry, thank you for the prompt. I guess if we could just look quick at what was in the packet of answers, and maybe if there's a 30-second version of what we're supposed to take away from those charts. I don't know. From those I spoke to, I'm not sure that they were very understandable.
And some of those charts, like the math didn't add up, and
Marge, can you talk us through it?
So
Or
are we
Rich?
talking about the middle school or the special areas? Because I'm going to defer to Rich on the middle school.
I'm speaking to the special areas that include the cuts to the music department.
Right. So my takeaway would be to look at that right-hand column, which is the aggregate of what they're suggesting that we have. For example, in figure 1.3, general music, he's suggesting that we have 1.5 FTE excess, and he does that by taking the total number of hours available in a 6-day cycle, how many they're teaching, how many he really feels they need to be teaching. And so we have 1.5 FTE extra. That 1.5 would include travel time. That's why we didn't take the whole 1.5. So he has two charts, one with travel time and one without.
And do we have one place, and we may, so bear with me, where we capture what we presently have allocated to each school for strings, band, et cetera, and what we're proposing and how many sections we need or how many hours of instruction we need at each of those places? I feel like the summary page is missing.
Right. So 1.4 talks about band and strings. What I will say is when you look at what we currently have, somewhere we have to charge travel time. And I think there's a misimpression. Every strings teacher and every band teacher is itinerant. So they're not dedicated to one school. So each one has travel time. And so that's why I think that we were having trouble figuring out how much Tokenique has, because it can unfortunately be arbitrary where the travel time is charged. And so I think that Mr. Levinson has told us here that we have some excess capacity in band and strings at the elementary. That's not the intention of where we would take the cuts. But that's why it's hard to look at where we charge things now. It's really travel time.
Jill, can I just ask a follow-up
Robin,
question? I mean,
please.
I had thought this was more element. I'm looking at figure A1, which is getting to your point, Julie, about the allocated to the schools required specials FTE capacity by school, but this is not including travel time. And the question I had looking at this at the right column, where they talk about equivalent FTE capacity, I noticed that at Royal and Tokenique for music, Royal has 0.1 capacity. For general music, Tokenique has 0.2, but the proposed cuts to music teachers at those schools is 0.4. So it appears that we would be cutting beyond the actual capacity of the teachers. And that's what I wanted to just ask a question about how
So
that would work.
again, that's because at this point, the travel time can get charged in, I just can't say it in any more palatable way, a little bit arbitrarily. So Tokenique and Royal will end up with the FTE they need, and we'll talk about how to better represent travel time in the budget for you. So you're right, Tokenique has the same number of sections as home, so they should have the same amount. And it's just the numbers that we were given to put into Munis at the beginning of the year. So it's not that those kids are not receiving lessons, it's just that the travel time got charged to home.
I'm sorry, so you're saying the travel time was in this chart? Because it says
It's
no
not in
travel.
his chart, but it's in what you were looking at, what.
No, but I'm looking at the one he did just now. That's why I guess my question is, if we do this and we do the implementation with the consultant, if it comes up that certain schools, when you add in the travel time, for instance, would we be able to reallocate among schools just to make sure that we are not
Yes.
cutting into that time?
Yes,
That was really my
I'm
question.
sorry, 100%.
Okay.
Anybody else on music? So we're going down the line, and I believe if I'm at the right spot, it was my reduction of English teacher and math teacher. And I think it was pretty clear when I proposed it. So I don't wish to comment any further other than to say that 6051 gives discretion to one person and one person only in terms of class size per comments earlier, and that's the superintendent. Then we go to elementary teacher aides. Any comments? Mr. Maroney? I'm sorry.
Are we talking about the plus 10 teacher aides and then the plus 5? Okay.
Yeah. Good. I was in the right spot. Denny, building substitute, anybody want to comment any further?
No.
Okay.
John, may I ask a question? about
Oh, I'm
building
sorry. I was
subs?
looking.
Building
Yes,
subs.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. Just from a comment we heard this evening, do we have 2 open or unfilled building sub positions presently?
So right now, there's one at the high school and Royal, but Royal is because that one is filling in on a long-term sub position. So we're looking for a temporary sub, but that long-term sub position will be over soon and they'll go back into their position. So
Okay.
it's just a transient.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Then Katie's restoration of the art teacher. Any comments or questions? Okay. RC9 principal. I get the glory of talking about this item. Marge, I think it first, perhaps you can talk about the contractual obligations regarding what this proposal, if carried through, would result in.
So the cut of the 0.2 at Royal. So under the DAA contract, a tenured administrator does have bumping rights. So to cut a 0.2 from the principal of Royal, that person would bump into what is now the vacant Oxford's position, and the Royal principal position would be a 0.8.
Okay.
So there's no provision in the contract to do salary. I thought the proposal was to eliminate a 0.2 FTE, and that triggers bumping.
So hearing that, Mr. Brown, do you have any thoughts in terms of what that means in your proposal and how that might change your proposal?
No, I think the proposal, when I proposed the question initially, I asked if that was, something we could even consider. So now that we have that information, and it seems that that's not something that's doable, it seems like this is a non-issue.
Okay, so to be clear, we're going to eliminate that suggestion.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, John. Moving on to the assistant principal. Any additional, pardon?
Not the assistant principal.
Oh, it's okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Any additional questions or clarification from board members? This is the elementary school ones.
I mean, I guess my only additional commentary would be, the reason why this was included in here was, this is my first go through on the budget cycle. In looking at kind of the procedure that Dr. Adley has taken, he brought in new solutions to look at the faculty. I thought it was odd that we didn't also look at the administration. And so as we've gotten more and more information around the administration, it seemed like versus the rest of the DERG, that we are overstaffed from an administration perspective. And digging into that even more, it seemed like a big driver of that is our assistant principal ratio versus students. And so I think that this may not be something that's solvable during this budget season, but I think it's something that I wanted to make sure was on the table so that we can deal with this well in advance of the next budget cycle. And maybe that means new solutions needs to look at our administration, do the same analysis that they did on the faculty, and provide some insight there.
Okay. You don't have to, I'm not pushing on it. There are 2 different possibilities. You want to continue to explore it in this budget cycle at all, or is it something you want to explore post this budget cycle?
As long as we have it earmarked for future budget cycles, I'm fine with taking it off.
Okay. I'm more than happy to take it as a line item to review. Thank you. Okay. Participation fees, we'll start with John's model. Any comments or questions? Okay. Participation fees, the Maroney model.
Wow, I have a Maroney model.
Comments or questions?
Just a point on that is that, I think we're in a difficult budget year and it's a way to raise revenue. Personally, I don't think it's the way to do it. I don't have kids in the school. My kids benefited from playing athletics and it was built on taxpayers who paid that before. I think we all benefit from the wonderful school system that we have, and that to burden school age parents with an additional tax is unfair and unjust. But it is a big line item. So I will leave it in and let the rest of you decide, but not a fan of it, but.
Wait, so you're not.
Let's try that again. You don't want participation fees in a vacuum, but you want it left on because it is a big line item if we find we need one. Is that?
And again, if we're, we had the RTM and the Board of Finance coming and say the budget is too high. If the RTM is going to vote down our budget because it is too high, then maybe it's a way to lower that number and tax. And we do a 1-year tax on school age parents to not affect services to children. But I am not a fan of that. And I don't agree with backing into a number. I think we have to do what is right by the students of Darien, and whatever that number is where we come out with what the number is, and the taxpayers will pay that number.
Okay. Robin, gate fees, gate receipts, any questions on that?
We didn't have any participation fee questions. On the
Oh,
other
sorry,
side.
fire away.
Sorry. No, I just, my mistake. Gate fees, I don't have any questions. No.
Okay. All right. So RC 11, I think there was just a reduction, which is you guys have coded to interscholastics because that's what you would recommend. And it was detail in the, is that correct, Rich?
So the request was to cut the interscholastics account by 100,000. So we identified the uniforms within that account that could make up.
That could make up that number. Okay.
Can I ask a question about that? So Rich, with that list, is that basically saying that you are delaying the uniform replacement cycle by a year, or would those be reconditioned?
You'd be delaying the uniform replacement cycle.
So they would.
So you'd be seeing these expenses in the fiscal 26 budget.
And the uniforms would just be using the uniforms from the prior year with no reconditioning.
Some of them would be reconditioned, but for the most part, you'd just be using the uniform as is.
Okay.
Any other questions, Julie?
Thank you. I think my question was intended to be a 10% cut to the operating budget, not to that line.
So Mr. Maroney proposed $100,000 cut to that line item.
But this, okay, so this also though says 102,001. That's just where you took it from?
For the most part.
Okay.
We can break that out because we did take it from other lines.
Okay. And then I had asked and hadn't seen yet 2 other follow-ups. I'd asked for a little more detail on what's in 102,001 over the years or the last 3 years, or beyond just the uniform replacement, which I know we received what's in there for this budget. So if we could get a little more info on that, that would be helpful. I'd also asked, sorry.
So it is in the per student schedule. So it's the supplies for like uniforms, it's fees for competitions, and the rental price that we pay for the split sports like hockey, skiing, et cetera.
Okay. I was just trying to figure it out because it looks like the numbers don't change until then it's a year that you're getting uniforms for that team. So
there's a replacement cycle. So there are ups and downs. When you have a big year for replacement cycles, you tend to get that big up. Next year,
it's the base number though. I'm saying that like most, like the teams they always have $5,000 for that line until they're getting a uniform.
For the most part.
So the supplies don't change prices?
Very little. We can break out the supplies if you want.
That's like the only thing we've found that doesn't change prices. That's amazing. And then my other question had been a little more information on the process for setting budgets or getting estimates for uniforms. We have some huge swings in uniforms.
So typically the athletic director will ask for like a verbal quote or an actual quote for it. Again, that quote is from October. So it's not necessarily held through the time the budget's adopted.
Okay, because like if you break them down on a per person, they are all over the map. We have some athletes who are getting $545 uniforms and some get $22 uniform. And I appreciate that different things are needed for different sports. So there's no more information to be had there. It's just a one-off. There's, okay, so $42,000 worth of lacrosse uniforms is the right answer and the best place to go. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Snow removal. If you have questions, God bless you, but.
No
Okay.
questions.
All right, auditorium fees.
No question.
Okay, 10% increase to building rentals. Any questions?
No.
Field rentals. Okay. We had a couple of consultant services. The scheduling consultant is already off the table, but the so Dave, this was an aggregate cut again, as I recall, and so I think these are the specific things. that we
Hands up
did.
if you want to look.
Yes, Dave.
Yeah, so not looking to cut the demographer, eliminating the weather service. I think if we're not having snow, that just makes perfect sense. The consulting services with where we are on that, let's buy some copies of the book. I don't think we need to come in and explain it to us. In terms of legal fees, same idea with the snow. Let's just, we don't have the contracts up this year. If we can make it not snow, then maybe we can make us not have legal bills, or maybe we can just lean on our council a little bit and keep that in line. So, and I guess I have dues membership. So yeah, CABE, I think those speak for themselves. And then the one for Richard Lamon's organization, again, I think that speaks for itself. Marge, I'm not sure if that's another one that can be done or we have a contractual restriction on that. Thanks, Marge.
Do we have an answer on that one, Alan, in here?
Yeah, well, yeah, it's just part of my contract.
So that can't be cut.
Shouldn't be.
Okay, the next one is the executive assistant. Any comments or questions?
I'll
Julie.
chime in. Thank you. So I propose this, not necessarily, well, certainly not presuming that the superintendent doesn't need or deserve some help from an administrative assistant. I think my point was that were there opportunities to share services there? I think it's an important conversation to be having this budget season in particular with all the things that are on the table. So I felt compelled to include it in the conversation. I understand that it is considered to be an unreasonable ask to operate without, but I know we have turnover at the moment. And as we work through it, if there's any way to find some more efficiencies, I would encourage us to do it, but I will take that cut off the table at the moment.
Okay.
Dave's got his hand.
Oh, Dave, I'm sorry, I'm not looking.
Can
Yes.
can I put this cut back on now, or is that not an option? Are we doing that tonight? I'm not sure what the scope is.
You
My guess is
can, I think
no.
we're in the middle of a hiring process
Okay.
for the person. So I think that's the rub.
Yeah, I just don't understand the one-to-one coverage. That doesn't seem at all reasonable in this day and age. So I'm just trying to understand that a little better.
Go ahead. He said he's asking about one-to-one coverage.
I'm assuming one-to-one coverage meaning the superintendent having a personal assistant.
Yeah, one
I
admin
think
to
you
that
answered it
position.
in the memo
No.
somewhere, didn't you?
I think you look most places, most CEOs have an executive assistant that's gonna, I don't know what the point of we're getting at, but if it's really saving money, certainly I would look at that if I could. But I need a personal assistant, okay, so you make your mind up, you want one of me, you don't.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the tailed
I
off.
said, the board can make a decision whether they want to have that personal assistant or whether they don't. I need one, okay, so that's what I would say. I expect one, but I'll leave that decision for the board.
You had some, can you walk us through the narrative that you provided, please?
Well, yes, so just Greenwich has a communications person, and we're trying to work through some communications issues, and we have we've talked about the communication, a communication consultant as our position, half-time, something else. And certainly the person that I would be looking to hire here would have communication expertise that would move us along in some direction, but it wouldn't be solely that. It wouldn't be solely for communications. If we want a communications person, we could always add in a communications person, but the person I would have high communication skills, contemporary communication skills.
Yeah, sorry, Katie. You guys, I'm sorry. I keep looking at the paper. Holler.
So I wanted to ask if there had been any discussion or consideration given, not necessarily to reducing the FTE, but potentially the salary range. My understanding is that the person exiting that position had over 40 years of experience and loyalty to the school. So is it possible to realize some efficiencies just in potentially with someone, that might be closer to the beginning of their career that could train up and learn the district from within? Is that an option?
Well, I certainly expect us to realize some savings in that position, yes.
Can you quantify that?
Not until I work through the process.
Any color you could give on like what we might be able to expect? Like, is it possible that this could be a $60,000 position? Is 75 realistic?
I think it's probably going to be north of 75 to replace somebody with the skills that we're looking for the superintendent. It's a very public facing position, so it can't really be somebody who's sort of new in that realm.
Dave.
Two quick follow-ups. Marge, if we're doing somebody for communications separate from somebody as an executive assistant, do we have any idea what that would cost ballpark?
So I think they're all over the place in this,
So
right?
there are only a handful in Fairfield County districts that have it, and they range from a low of 75 to a high of $170,000. So the districts that have it, like Greenwich has one, for example, Stanford, Norwalk, Fairfield have it. New Canaan has one as well. They're actually the low end. They're at that $75,000 range, but they are all over the map.
Got it. And so for those examples you cited, Rich, Fairfield, Greenwich, they have a single executive assistant to the super plus a communications person?
So everybody with the exception of Greenwich has an executive assistant for the superintendent and then also a communications person.
So Greenwich has one superintendent or one admin assigned to one superintendent in addition to an outside.
So Greenwich has an admin who's shared by the superintendent and the assistant superintendent, and then a full-time director of communications, and then also a part-time communication specialist.
I'm sorry. All right. So the admin shared.
The admin is shared, and then they have 1.5 communications people.
Thanks, Rich.
No. Okay. Greg, other view.
Wait, to be clear, are you adding, cutting?
Are you adding it back in?
Back in, or?
I think that was pending whether I could or not, but maybe we'll just punt for now.
Okay, so right now it's removed.
Correct.
Thank you.
Greg, any commentary on or Alan, anything to add on the other BOE expenses, or maybe Rich, you want to add?
It's just some of this stuff here that we're doing at the moment that would impact the salary for that particular service that the person is
If
providing.
we
at the
reduce the
moment.
time of the meetings, would that reduce? I'm not.
The person who records the meetings is not our employee. He is a third-party contractor, and so the rates are going up.
And for the record, the recordings are our minutes. Like that's what that is how we have the details.
All right, we've already talked about $3,000 in a $121 million budget.
All right, PD. Curriculum development. The direct. Questions? Okay, dues and memberships. Okay. Director of Mental Health. Questions or comments? Director of Elementary Education, questions or comments? All right, the next PD line item for 19. Questions or comments, Julie?
I do have a question there.
I think my question is about what you had chosen you would cut in order to arrive at that. and it was an item on the required PD list. So I was curious about that choice. I think it was the responsive classroom.
Right, well, we wouldn't be failing to adhere to the requirement. We have other opportunities within the district to also support that work. But we wouldn't have quite the same opportunity for our new to district administrators, for example, to have the same training that has been happening in the district historically. But we would still meet the requirement.
Okay, and that's still where you'd go over
Yeah.
a
So I
list
picked
of
what-
elective.
Right, I picked would have the least impact to the overall programming for professional learning for our staff.
Okay, thank you very
Because
much.
we can still meet that need.
Thank you.
Online subscriptions. EOP tuition, I think you already talked about. Campus monitor, comments or questions? All right. We're at the end of the line item list. Is there anything else that anyone else would like to?
Capital.
Pardon?
Capital.
Capital. And actually, I have a capital comment. Capital, thank you, Julie. I actually want to add the high school desks back into operating. We've been asked by F&B to do that, so we might as well talk about it. Got that one? Rich? Thanks. Anything else in capital? Katie?
Rich, just one clarifying question to make sure that I understood our last discussion, but the snow blower at Ox Ridge, can you just quantify like what the minimum amount of snow is that it can handle? Like, is there a threshold of when, the snow is below it being effective?
We would use it if there's at least a couple inches.
So the last snowstorm we had didn't quite reach that level though, right?
So the first snowstorm we had did, that took 6 hours with 5 people there to clean
So
out.
really like 30, right?
Yeah, so really like 30 hours. Well, the school is beautiful from a maintenance standpoint. There are a lot of sidewalks. It's a much bigger lot. If we just look at the 2 storms we had now, you'd get your money back on the snowstorm within, 5 or 6 years, considering very little snow actually happening. I know we spent very little last year. We've already spent about $18,000 this year in snow removal. And the bulk of that is at Oxridge. So I mean, if you wanted to lower the snow removal account in the operating budget, the way to effectively do it is to provide the machinery available to our custodians and our grounds crew to do it.
And then one follow-up question, what's the, remind me of the average lifespan for this type of machinery?
So it should last over 10 years.
Okay, so I'm happy to remove this from the cut, add it back.
Okay. All right. Based on what we heard this evening, are there any other requests or comments in terms of an overall look at this budget? No, we're satisfied with where we are. We have 2 more budget discussions. We've heard from a lot of people in the community. We've heard from Board of Finance. We've heard from RTM a couple times. So we have a lot to think about. We will meet next Tuesday, 6th.
Yes, on the budget calendar.
On the budget calendar. I thank you all for your time. You have let me just check the agenda, but I'd like a motion to adjourn, right? I'm right.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. That's John, seconded by Julie. All those in favor, that's unanimous. Thank you very much.